Welcome to the Fantasy Audiobook. American Comics. Magic Engine, Opening Homelander Template. Chapter 41. Storm Girl. Man, what a coincidence. Ivan almost couldn't help laughing when he saw this template. But then again, Stormgirl's ability is still quite strong. It can be said that it is second only to the Homelander ability that Ivan obtained in the first lottery draw. Definitely, this is still a lot worse than that. But still very good. Ivan squeezed his fingers, his face quite satisfied. Crush it, you'll love it, and next time you see director Nick Fury, you won't complain to me about SHIELD's lack of supernatural power. Hearing this, Natasha Romanoff's eyes lit up. What Ivan meant, she couldn't understand anymore. When inheriting the martial arts master scroll, Ivan never said that. Instead, this time, doesn't that mean that the reward in front of you is much, much better than the previous one? Natasha Romanoff thought of this and took the card slowly. Then expectantly crushed it. Gotcha. Suddenly, starlight splashed. Card-shattering starlight flew into Natasha Romanoff's body. Natasha Romanoff begins to close her eyes. Withstand the optimization and sublimation of the template to the body. At the moment, she is changing from start to finish, just like Ivan before. I do not know how long it has been. Natasha Romanoff finally opened her eyes and let out a slow breath. Ivan leaned on the sofa, propped his chin with one hand and smiled. Do you know how much your final strength will improve after this evolution, as long as you exercise hard? Natasha Romanoff thought for a moment. Today's lizardmen. Too little. Ivan shook his head. Be bold. Captain America during World War II. It's still a lot. Ivan shook his head again. Be bolder. This time Natasha Romanoff hesitation for a while before asking tentatively. Hulk. This time Ivan nodded. Exercise to the top level, maybe only a little worse than him. But your abilities are different, and you may be stronger or weaker. Ivan hooked her hand. Come here. Natasha Romanoff obediently came over and squatted down. Ivan reached out and touched her forehead. Pass the Storm Girl's ability knowledge to her. Transferring. Transmission is complete. Feel a wave of knowledge entering your mind. Natasha Romanoff closed her eyes and digested the knowledge. After a while, she opened her eyes again. And Ivan could see a strong surprise and excitement in her eyes. Actually, Natasha Romanoff at the moment is really in this state. Strengthening physique, can actually ignore light weapons. The damage of pistols, rifles, and grenades can be ignored. And flight. Natasha Romanoff never thought that he could achieve the ability of free flight with only his body. You know, now only Superman can fly. S.H.I.E.L.D. has yet to document who can do flight using only the original ability. There is also the ability to manipulate lightning. This supernatural ability will definitely become an extremely powerful means of attack. And it's a long-range attack. While definitely a lot weaker than Ivan's heat vision, it was enough for Natasha Romanoff, who never thought of surpassing Ivan. Now she may just want to follow Ivan. Even S.H.I.E.L.D. doesn't want to go, it's better to have a mission. But Natasha Romanoff still knew that it was better to take it slow and couldn't do it in one step. In reality, Natasha Romanoff was excited. She looked at Ivan lying reclining on the sofa, close at hand, and bent down to take a bite. Ivan didn't turn his head, and put his hand over her. What if it was passive once or twice? Ivan sat up and got up off the sofa. Without the blue light of the magic engine, the moonlight once again spilled into the living room and on the two of them. Ivan came to the floor-to-ceiling windows by the sea and opened the back door. Come on. Natasha Romanoff quickly followed. Get out of the villa. It is the lawn of the rest area and the cliff by the sea. Ivan said slowly as he walked. Next, I will take you to a place like paradise. Natasha Romanoff smiled. Is it a secret base? Ivan shook his head. That's so low. After all, Ivan stopped. Natasha Romanoff also stopped by Ivan's side. Suddenly, under Natasha Romanoff's surprised eyes, Ivan put his arms around her and flew straight to the sky. After flying about a few hundred meters, Ivan hovered in the air. Natasha Romanoff looked around curiously, but saw nothing. Heaven. Ivan smiled and said in a low voice. Grant Natasha Romanoff, guest permission. At the same time, a cold female voice appeared in Natasha Romanoff's mind. Authorized. Immediately, under her gaze, the world of the sky seems to have been stripped of a layer of space. A huge amount of castle, or a palace, slowly appeared in her field of vision. Definitely, the palace is still in stealth. It's just that Natasha Romanoff got guest permissions, so she could see the palace. It was Angel's palace that made her see it, not Angel's palace that appeared. Look at Natasha Romanoff with wide eyes. Ivan smiled and Fei Jin Gong put her down. You can visit, this is my real home. Natasha Romanoff looked around with disbelief on her face. She dropped Ivan and started walking inside. No way, her performance is in Ivan's prediction. Angel's aesthetic is too advanced. Almost every detail is perfect. So there is nothing wrong with heaven. As for why he wanted to bring Natasha Romanoff, let Natasha Romanoff know about this place. Be realistic. 1. Natasha Romanoff accepted his favor and agreed to the trading conditions, then Natasha Romanoff will definitely become his own. 2. Natasha Romanoff is a woman, let her come here, know that it's acceptable to Ivan. 3rd, let's look at the future in this regard. It is uncertain now, but what is certain is that Natasha Romanoff's future is only possible by relying on himself. Next, Ivan accompanied Natasha Romanoff to many places in the palace. In fact, many of these places he has never been to. But there is one thing the two are alike. That is, they all like the resting place for the elderly in the back garden. It's beautiful. Natasha Romanoff leaned back on a chaise longue and looked at the stars in the sky. Ivan nodded in agreement. I like it here too. After thinking about it, Ivan gave Natasha Romanoff a little incentive. Work hard to practice ability. The guest permission I gave you will not be revoked. As long as you master flight, you can come here at any time in the future. Really? Natasha Romanoff straightened up immediately. She thought Ivan was just bringing her here to watch. Definitely, Ivan confirmed. A confident smile appeared on Natasha Romanoff's face. With hard work, she is not afraid of anyone. However, light energy is not enough to get here. After meeting Ivan, her icy heart that had only completed tasks before became a lot more greedy. Be realistic. She wants to live here. Suddenly, the Angel Palace intelligence system set up by Ivan issued a prompt. My lord, in 1 minute, there will be a big battle on the streets of a university in New York. The participating units this time include Ross Army, Bronsky Hate, Hulk. At the same time, the Tony She Stark at the moment you have drawn my attention to is in an endangered state. He is going to Potts to give him the arc reactor after elimination. According to the calculation of the dark matter engine, the probability of his self-rescue this time is as high as 91%. Obadiah Tieba is in the underground of Stark Group. Miss Potts is taking Phil Coulson agent to arrest him. According to the calculation of the dark matter engine, the failure rate of this agent operation is close to 98%. However, after Tony Stark saved himself, the success rate reversed back to 80%. Peter Parker Spider-Man reacts passively and is heading to the battle site between Hulk and Abomination, and is expected to arrive in 15 minutes. Guys, it's time to get together. Tony was plotted by Obadiah, and the Iron King officially appeared. Banner, who was taught the Beast Spirit Walker ability, was finally going to fight with hatred. The difference is that this time little Spider-Man stepped in. There are some changes in the plot, but not much. What happened? Look at Ivan's playful smile. Natasha Romanoff felt something was wrong and asked softly. Ivan didn't talk nonsense. With a wave of his palm, 3 real-time 3-dimensional images of the dark energy Gojian appeared in front of the two of them. Natasha Romanoff first tilted her head to look. After seeing the result clearly, I immediately stood up and walked to the 3D model. One is a live broadcast of Tony Stark. One is a live stream of NYU streets. One is at the entrance of the Stark building of live history. Natasha Romanoff looked stunned. She didn't expect that Ivan actually had the ability to monitor in real time all over New York. The second is distress. New York is so chaotic. Just finished fighting the Lizardmen today. As a result, so many things popped up at night. Without the ability Ivan gave him, Natasha Romanoff would have shook his head. At this time, her agent's phone rang, but there was one more message that came before her call. My lord, satellite signal is detected, do you allow access? This line was apparently played to Natasha Romanoff as well. Ivan waved his hand. Allow. Yes, permission settings. Only calls are allowed. After Natasha Romanoff answered. Phil Coulson on the other side was still wondering why the satellite phone didn't work, but immediately explained it. Natasha Romanov, your support is needed here. Where? Natasha Romanov suddenly returned to the cold. I'm dealing with Obadiah with Miss Posey, and I'm here, but the agent patrolling over University Street reported that there was a problem, and there may be an upcoming battle between the Army and Hulk. Me. Natasha Romanov frowned. The big battle between the Army's firepower and the Hulk, how could she intervene? Do you want her to deliver it? No. Phil Coulson turned his words, and then said in his tone that he could only make you aggrieved, or that he should dedicate himself to S.H.I.E.L.D. You can't let the Army and Hulk fight in the city, otherwise the city will be completely destroyed. You need to go to Superman Ivan. No matter what you do, make sure Ivan shoot. This is also the order of director Nick Fury. Whatever way. Natasha Romanov chuckled silently. Phil Coulson was silent for a moment. Apparently he also knew what it meant. But he still answered very affirmatively, anyway. Just hearing such an answer made Natasha Romanov's eyes gradually cold. I'll do it. Natasha Romanov then hung up the satellite call. Ivan definitely listened to the whole process. See Natasha Romanov silent. Ivan also patted her shoulder helplessly. Come with me later, you go to Little Spider-Man, and let him help Tony. Obadiah is not easy to solve. Natasha Romanov nodded silently. Just when she raised her head again, her eyes were a little wet. The screen turns around. At the moment Tony Stark's home. Because the arc reactor, which was made into a decoration, was placed on the table. Tony struggled to reach for it, but it was still a little short. Roar! The raised hand again fell to the ground. Tony's face was blue and gray, and there was a hint of despair and unwillingness in his eyes. His armor skills are far from reaching the top. The medicine prescribed in the magic engine has been analyzed, and it is the antidote that can relieve palladium poisoning. Although it is not cured after taking it, it can at least give him more time to find new elements. Who is the real identity of Superman in Black? I haven't met him yet, made friends with him. If you get to know each other, become friends. When it's time for a party, I'll be able to brag with Colonel Roddy. I'm Iron Man, my friend's Superman, do you understand gold content? But now, it seems like everything is over. Tony's vision began to dim, gradually losing consciousness. Pop! Suddenly, the sound of glass shattering woke Tony up. He looked up along the floor. What he saw was the little intelligent helper who helped him push down the arc reactor. Slowly pick up the arc reactor. Stretching it hard into my heart. Tony complimented the rest of his life. You're such a good boy. Shortly thereafter, a red-yellow steel figure rushed out of Tony's seaside villa. University Town on the other side. When General Ross made a desperate attempt to describe the battle plan in detail. Bronski waited downstairs with increasing impatience. Listen to the words in the headset. CEFH, be careful, focus on the mission, don't hurt Banner, and try to capture these words alive. Bronski's heart was beating wildly. One is that he is impatient. The second is that his genes have been unable to withstand the collapse. But General Ross was still there with assignments. At this moment, out of the corner of his eye, he saw Banner walking around in Mr. Land's laboratory. Bronski's pupils shrank. He couldn't bear the nagging any longer. He just wants to fight. He wants to release the genes in his body. Then frantically destroy it all. Bang! Bronski pulled down the headset, slammed it on the ground, and rushed up. The teammates next to him shouted when they saw this. Bronski. And in Mr. Land's private laboratory. Lying on the injection bed, Banner thought silently after watching Mr. Land inject the big bag of blue medicine into his body. If this time is successful, Hulk will be a thing of the past. But he will always remember Ivan's help, and he will definitely find opportunities to repay Ivan in the future. Definitely, Ivan probably doesn't need his help. But he will always remember this kind of support. But if unsuccessful, Banner also thought about the measures. Cultivating the heart-clearing formula and training the ability of the Beast Spirit Walker. Living and hiding in New York these days gave him no time to practice these abilities. I have read a lot of clear heart formulas. The most intuitive feeling is that Hulk is easier to control and his temper is easier to control, and Hulk will not appear as casually as before. But the ability of the Beast Spirit Walker really has no time to connect. Because it requires him to constantly change from Banner to Hulk, and then back and forth from Hulk to Banner. And there are also some things that the other side will do. So Banner only tried it a few times in the woods during this time. But this time to fail. Banner can only make this exercise into his daily task. Definitely, he would too. Immediately after, with a large injection of blue medicine, Banner's consciousness gradually began to dim. Sudden. A green light flashed in his eyes. Woo! Banner's real body also suddenly burst into flames. This is Hulk resisting. It felt that the potion was aimed at itself. So no matter whether the medicine is good or bad, it doesn't want to see it. But Banner was already prepared. He quickly recited the formula to clear his mind. Suddenly Hulk's explosion was suppressed again. Dr. Lan watched smashing it from the side. What did Bruce Banner say and why does it work on the mind and will? Injections continue. Although Hulk was still resisting, he was reluctantly suppressed by Banner with a clear-hearted formula. At the same time, Hulk, who was helpless, could only feel the effect of this blue potion. As a result, Hulk's consciousness suddenly rejoiced instinctively. Because this blue potion is not meant to weaken Hulk. He instead has an evolutionary and stabilizing effect on Hulk. The previous Hulk was very unstable, like there was an unyielding instinct, so Banner couldn't control it at all. But after the genes in Banner tasted this blue energy, it started to devour frantically. Just inject a little all over the body and devour a little. After a long time, with the medicine watching over, Hulk's genes fell asleep, because it is going to evolve, and it is still evolving in a more stable direction. Mr. Lan watched Banner fall into a deep sleep. After the potion was injected, he hurriedly stepped forward to help Banner untangle, and then helped him down. As a result, I just sent Banner to the chair. Bang! With a loud noise, the door of Mr. Lan's laboratory was kicked violently. But his lab is locked. After Bronsky discovered the problem, holding the gun to the door lock was simply pressing the trigger. Da 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 da. Tongues of fire spit. Immediately, the locked door was smashed through. Ah! The entire teaching building screamed out in panic. Because Bronsky was a rifle and nearly emptied the magazine, the entire neighborhood who could hear the gunshots began to flee. There are a lot of college students around here, and it's still a place with a higher research level than Yale University before. General Ross looked at the panicked crowd and immediately cursed. It's over. Bronsky was literally driving him into a corner. He originally wanted to sneak up on Banner with a sedative gun, and then take Banner quietly and intact without disturbing the students and doctoral researchers here. But Bronsky's move directly forced him to start fighting quickly, and immediately took Banner forcibly. But if Banner is frightened, he mutates into Hulk. That's all over. But luckily, Bronsky kicked open the door of the lab. You are. Then he pushed away Mr. Lan, who rushed over. He came to the unconscious Banner next to him. Holding Banner's neck with both hands, he said fiercely. Let it out. Let Hulk out. Put it out. Bronsky at the moment is wildly insane. Sweat was dripping from his abnormal face. But he didn't respond. Holding Banner with both hands, Bronsky kept pushing and pulling Banner. But looking at the Banner still did not change. Bronsky's anger grew, and people became more and more excited. Suddenly, it occurred to him that Hulk had to be stimulated to appear. Immediately, he punched Banner in the stomach. Bang! Banner was shocked, but even so, Banner still did not respond, and even fainted. Do not, Bronsky growled. Puff tilde operator. He threw Banner to the ground. Then he took out his rifle and shouted fiercely, give it back to me. Sheet. At this time, his teammates rushed over and immediately brought down Browns from behind. You're crazy, Bronsky. General Ross wants a full Banner. After speaking, he hurriedly pushed Bronsky away. Then he and his teammates dragged Banner onto a stretcher and carried him away. Bronsky lay on the ground, watching Banner being carried away by his teammates. Bang! He slammed the hammer on the floor. Then stand up and look around. Eventually he saw the injection bed. He looked at Mr. Lan, who was lying on the ground, and seemed to understand something. Bronsky dropped the gun and walked to Mr. Lan's side. Then he grabbed his neck with one hand and slowly lifted it up. Inject me, the same potion as Banner. Whatever the potion is. Bronsky was crazy, and a dead horse would be given the same injection as a living horse doctor. Mr. Lan's face turned red and said with difficulty. No problem, but, needs, you, cooperate. Queens at the moment. Pissed tilde operator tilde operator tilde operator. A silver thread streaked in the air. Immediately afterwards, another red and blue figure floated silently in the air like a phantom. There is a bridge on the closest way out of Queens. If Peter Parker wants to swing over, he has to cross this bridge. Pissed tilde operator tilde operator tilde operator. Peter Parker hits the bridge with a cobweb. Then he skillfully prepared to take advantage of the trend. But when he was halfway through, Peter Parker. What? Peter Parker was taken aback by the sudden sound. He immediately pulled the cobweb hard and stopped on the pillar of the bridge. Wait until he looks around. A slender figure with white skin and long legs seemed to be waiting for him here. Peter Parker took a closer look. Romanov agent, why are you here? On a mission. Natasha Romanov's voice wasn't so cold. After all, Peter Parker is Ivan's good friend and classmate. And in the final analysis, they are also people who depend on Ivan. And if they were to bring everyone to a table, Peter Parker was on their side. Even Peter Parker joins superhero later. But the same camp is absolute. On a mission, Peter Parker took a risk when he heard it. Is it true? What's going on in downtown New York? A lot happened, but Ivan asked me to come here and wait for you, explains Natasha Romanoff. Ivan. Peter Parker was startled. How did he know I would come out? What did he say? We'll talk about it later. Natasha Romanoff turned her wrist and looked at the time on her watch. I don't have time to explain to you. There are two major incidents in the city, one of which Ivan will solve, and one of which Ivan asks you to follow me to solve it. Following you. Peter Parker frowned. How can I trust you? Even if Ivan said it, why didn't he text me? Because the reason Ivan only told me and let me convey it to you is because Ivan wanted to express his trust in me. Natasha Romanoff sighed inwardly. Although she knew these things, they definitely couldn't be said, she just kept them in her heart. After thinking about it, Natasha Romanoff can only say so. It's just that some of these words are surprising and somewhat ambiguous. I still have Ivan's DNA on me, do you want to test it with me? Haha. Peter Parker was immediately stunned, and quickly changed the subject. So where are we going now? Natasha Romanoff jumped lightly. He jumped directly from the 10-meter-high bridge column. Go to the door of the Stark group. After a few minutes, Natasha Romanoff and Peter Parker quickly arrived at the Stark group's warehouse center. This is the place where Iron Overlord hides. Natasha Romanoff connected the headset and asked in a cold voice. I'm here with a helper. Phil Coulson, who was in the underground warehouse with a wave to find Obadiah, was overjoyed when he heard it. Natasha Romanoff arrives, stating that Ivan's mission is complete, and said to bring a helper. Phil Coulson whispered, we're underground searching for Obadiah, and you're up there to meet us and block the entrance to the warehouse. I see. Natasha Romanoff replied and closed the connection. Peter Parker squatted on the truck and looked around. Where's the trouble? Natasha Romanoff ignored the rhetoric. So I went to the fence to the side and closed my eyes and leaned on it to rest. But next second, bang, the earth trembled. A muffled sound followed with the trembling of the floor. Peter Parker jumped out of the truck and lay on the ground listening. Bang, another voice sounded. Under, Peter Parker said in surprise. Natasha Romanoff frowned, took up her weapon and looked at the warehouse door. At this moment Phil Coulson's voice came through the headset. Trouble. Obadiah personally built a set of silver large armor, and he rushed towards the ground. Silver large armor. Natasha Romanoff pressed the headset. Where did he get the arc reactor for energy? I don't know. Phil Coulson replied hurriedly as he ran. I don't know where he got the energy from, but it looks like the one on Tony Stark's chest. If it's the one on Tony Stark's chest, then he's probably more fortunate. At this time, since Phil Coulson said it half-shouted, Obadiah, who was chasing beside him, laughed when he heard it. Tony, he can't come, you have to stay here too. No one can stop me from taking over the Stark group. Watch out, he's headed for the ground. The voice just fell. Iron Man did not go through the main entrance of the warehouse. Instead, he slammed into the wall of the warehouse and rushed out. Trouble. Natasha Romanoff pursed her red lips and looked at Peter Parker, who was stunned. Can you help me control him from time to time? Peter Parker came back to his senses. Definitely. Chang. After he finished speaking, 8 incomparably sharp spider legs appeared from behind him. The razor's sharp end gleamed silver in the night. Anyone who looked at it knew that it was absolutely sharp and terrifying. Peter Parker said with a smile. Don't look at who taught me to use ability, let him taste the power of the 8 spears that Ivan gave me. 9. But the next moment, a figure wearing a black combat tights has already rushed up. That speed is so fast that normal people can't see it clearly. Peter Parker's surprised roar. No wonder, you also got the ability Ivan gave you. After finishing speaking, looking at Natasha Romanov who was only left behind, he hurried over with a flick of cobweb. Wait for me, I'll tell you if I can't help. But what about Natasha Romanov? She had already rushed to the Iron Overlord. Ha 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 ha, Iron Overlord looked at Natasha Romanov who was rushing up and laughed. Be over yourselves, taste the power of my Iron Overlord armor. Immediately, Obadiah controlled the Iron Overlord to wield a steel fist. But what Natasha Romanov is good at. Flexible, skillful, like a deadly blow like a serpent. Not to mention Natasha Romanov who has strengthened templates. At the moment, although she is still growing, she also has some ability bonuses after she has sublimated. What's more, Natasha Romanov has been genetically strengthened. And there is also the inheritance of martial arts masters. The current Natasha Romanov can even meet her who she was a day ago. A random sidestep dodged the Iron Overlord fist. Natasha Romanov took advantage of Tieba's flat A and swayed backwards, and kicked it on Tieba's back knee socket with accelerated gravity. Bang! Taiba Wong immediately knelt on one leg. Natasha Romanov then turned over and came to the head of the Iron King. Little fool, Obadiah swearing in the armor. At the same time, he also controlled the battle armor to reach out to Natasha Romanov above his head. Come cobweb, but it wasn't what he wanted. Because this time there are 2 people participating in the war. Peter Parker shoots cobweb with both hands, and immediately wraps a steel arm of Iron Overlord, clenching it tightly in the palm of his hand and pulling it. When Obadiah saw it, he quickly waved his other hand and smashed it. Watch out, one more hand, Peter Parker warned, but the strengthened Natasha Romanov's 5 senses are very sensitive. As soon as he noticed a big hand coming, Natasha Romanov took advantage of the situation with a roll, giving up the attack directly and rolled over from the Iron Overlord head. In the back of the Iron Overlord, Natasha Romanov pulled out the pistol from her lap. Pull the trigger directly into the crack of his steel armor. Touch, 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 bang. He fired several rounds in a row, and as a result, he saw that there was no damage in the gap of the Iron Overlord. Natasha Romanov threw away the now useless pistol. Gunshots are heard. Obadiah laughed in the armor. The material technology of the Stark Group is no joke. This steel armor needs at least missiles or armor-piercing shells to be damaged. When he was done, he didn't even have to break free from little Spider-Man's grip. Instead, he turned around, raised his free left hand, pointed the machine gun on his arm, and laughed wildly at Natasha Romanov. I can resist bullets, can your body do it? Saying that, the arm is about to shoot. Little Spider-Man hurriedly threw away the cobweb in his hand. Then quickly made up a shot and tugged hard on his left hand. Da 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 da. Suddenly, with Peter Parker's drag control. Uncontrollably, the Iron Overlord controlled by Obadiah opened fire and swept toward the other side. It just swept a line straight out. Phil Coulson, Posey, and a group of agents who had just been driven out of the underground warehouse were swept back by bullets. He could only hide in the corner and shiver. Bugs. Obadiah scolded Peter Parker angrily. I'm going to break your hands and feet. Oh, you are so cruel. Little Spider-Man covered his mouth in scare. Can't you learn from me and be a 5-star citizen of New York? 5-star citizens. Oh no, I was wrong, it's a Miyoshi citizen. Go to hell. Da 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 da. Iron Overlord immediately controlled the steel arm that had just broken free and shot towards Little Spider-Man. But Little Spider-Man is also flexible. He shoots cobweb directly on the spot. Immediately, he jumped to the roof of the warehouse and disappeared into the Iron Overlord field of vision. Ah, all to die. Obadiah was played with a bit of a breakdown. He shot around randomly. It doesn't matter who or where it is shot. Anyway, just press the trigger and go crazy. Natasha Romanov dodged behind the warehouse and disappeared from Iron King's field of vision. This made Iron Overlord, who had no goals, completely collapsed. He vented and shot around, regardless of what to do now. Exclamation mark. Suddenly, a group of flames shot up into the sky. When everyone saw it, it turned out that the large truck had been bombed. But the loud noise also woke Obadiah. He responded, "In this kind of venue, there is no advantage in playing by yourself." He had to go to a place with a lot of hostages. Thought here. Obadiah was silent and rushed directly towards the gate of the warehouse. He's going outside. He's going outside to make this group of people unable to use their hands and feet. He wants those ordinary people to limit their ability. Looking at the Iron Overlord rushing outside, Phil Coulson shouted suddenly, "Can't let him out. It's downtown. There's a lot of traffic on the road. No one can stop me." Tibawong heard his plan was seen through. He immediately accelerated and rushed outside. Natasha Romanov suddenly jumped from the roof one after another. Peter Parker pulled the cobweb and flew right by the side. He also asked quickly on the way, "What should I do now? Your weapon can't break through his iron. Why don't I attack and try it with the 8 spears Ivan rewarded me with? He can pierce the steel plate 2 centimeters later. Originally, I heard that it was going to be replaced by Little Spider-Man." Natasha Romanoff wanted to refuse directly. Peter Parker was in his teens. It's not appropriate for Peter Parker to face huge amounts of risk at such a young age. But the 8 spear weapons that Ivan rewarded him turned out to be so powerful. When you think about it, Peter Parker and Ivan are about the same size. Then try it. Natasha Romanoff nodded during the interception. "I'm going to hold him, you take the opportunity to attack from the position above his head." "No problem." Natasha Romanoff agreed when Little Spider-Man heard it. Immediately happily pull cobweb and rush up. And Natasha Romanoff then arrived at the Iron King. I saw the two pushed up again. Obadiah controlled Iron Overlord and immediately wanted to jet energy and fly away. It immediately changes the structure in place. Pissed. Huge amounts of flames spewed from his feet. And the huge amounts of Tibawong's figure began to rise slowly. "Watch yourself gradually move away from the ground." Obadiah laughed arrogantly. "Wait for me. I'm going to create an army of steel to pacify you." But the next moment, Parker kicks. A red and blue figure saw that the Iron Overlord wanted to fly away. Peter Parker thought for a second. He shot left and right to the houses on either side. Then he shot himself out like a slingshot. And he's also posing for a flying kick in the air. Bang! Exclamation mark. First there was a crashing sound. The huge Iron King flew out after being kicked by Little Spider-Man at an accelerated speed. Who told Tibawong to leave the ground? If he doesn't get off the ground. Peter Parker's kick was the most to knock him down, not nearly enough to fly him. After the whole person fell to the ground, Obadiah encountered the problem that Iron Overlord didn't want to encounter. Falls are easy. It's hard to get up. Obadiah struggled to get up from the ground. Natasha Romanoff's eyes lit up. She knew right away that the opportunity was coming. Take out the alloy dagger. Natasha Romanoff accelerated and slid next to Obadiah. Then hold the alloy dagger tightly with both hands, lift it vigorously, and slam it towards the structure on the opposite side of Tibawong's knee. This position also happened to be the position where she kicked. Chong, a sharp stab. 0. With the physical fitness that Natasha Romanoff has strengthened, he stabbed hard. The alloy dagger nearly broke. But in the process of Tibawong's legs retracting and bending his legs, there has been obvious lag phenomenon. Iron Overlord waved his arm backwards. Natasha Romanoff reacted quickly and jumped back to avoid the attack. Peter Parker saw an opportunity. He jumped up from the sky. Under the moonlight, he shouted excitedly towards the Iron Bully's steel thigh that was stuck. "Eat me one more blow." Parker kick. Bang. Click. Immediately, Peter Parker hit the same spot with another acceleration kick. And accompanied by the sound of flying kicks, the steel thigh also made a cracking sound. "My steel armor!" Obadiah cried out in heartache in Iron Overlord. He controlled Tibawong to support his hands on the ground, and immediately turned his heavy body over first. Look at the left leg flashing red on the control panel. The Iron King sat on the ground, raising his hands and full-body weapons in exasperation to attack Peter Parker and Natasha Romanoff. Not only bullets this time. And small missiles and bombs. "Be careful. Run." See here. The little Spider-Man was shocked, and immediately leaned down, kicking hard on the ground with 8 spider legs of 8 spears. Immediately, a figure flashed by in an instant. Only 8 deep, pointed holes remained in the ground. And Peter Parker has disappeared. So fast. Roar was startled when Little Pepper hiding in the warehouse saw this. She is just an ordinary person. So the speed of Peter Parker's disappearance just now only saw a shadow in her naked eyes. Then there is nothing. Phil Coulson next to him also frowned slightly. To be frank, he didn't see much either. It's too fast. Immediately after, with Peter Parker's goal disappearing, Obadiah again aimed at Natasha Romanoff while strafing his full-body weapon. But is Natasha Romanoff worse than Little Spider-Man? At least a little now. Natasha Romanoff now has a legacy of martial arts masters. Look at the nearest factory. Natasha Romanoff slammed into the distance, flew out more than 10 meters, and stopped at the right position. Then, with a slight jump, his hands hooked to the roof of the factory building more than 10 meters high, and the last easy turnover disappeared without a trace. So strong. Phil Coulson stared wide-eyed from a distance, shocked and unable to calm down. He is an agent and a normal person, so he knew better how difficult it was to improve his strength. But when did Natasha Romanoff become so strong? This afternoon, he was clearly chased and beaten by the lizardmen. How can you become so powerful that you didn't have a kung fu in such a night? Natasha Romanoff and Ivan disappeared when they separated. Where did she go after that? No way. Without Nick Fury's permission, he can't investigate pure agents unless he investigates privately. But private investigations are even more impossible for a pro player like Natasha Romanoff. Dare to track her down. It would be nice not to be anti-tracking investigation. Righteousness. Da 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 da. Boom boom boom. Iron Overlord tilted his bullet fire. But after playing the water splashing style for about tens of seconds, nothing was killed except for a mess. Peter Parker and Natasha Romanoff are long gone. Phil Coulson's agents and Poes never came out. You. Obadiah almost fainted in anger. He furiously smashed the control panel a few times. However, Tibawong's system still reports that the left mechanical leg is faulty, and there is a foreign body stuck in the joint that needs to be dealt with. Bang bang. Obadiah slammed the moving button several times. Quack. Gah. Bang. Powered by the arc reactor, Iron Overlord's steel armor stretched out his left leg with all his strength. The alloy dagger stuck in the socket of his left leg was also completely broken. Ha 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 ha. Obadiah laughed madly. You can't stop the Iron Overlord. Immediately, while Natasha Romanoff and Peter Parker weren't around, he immediately controlled the armor to stand up and ran towards the outside. But the process was not too smooth, because Peter Parker's last kick did break something on it. Iron Overlord limped and ran. What happened? Obadiah immediately understood when he saw Iron Overlord running like this. You broke my Iron King. Although so scolded, but Obadiah knew it was not a place to stay for long. So he ran outside while scolding. Peter Parker jumped on the roof of the warehouse and stretched out his hand helplessly. Hi. Don't run if you can. Obadiah ignored him at all. Even run faster. What? Peter G turned his head to look at Natasha Romanoff on the roof of another warehouse. Natasha Romanoff was silent for a moment. It's risky to chase. If Peter Parker gets hurt, Ivan preaches to himself. With such a big person, things can't be settled, and people can't protect them. But if she doesn't chase, the mission fails, and she doesn't complete the mission clearly instructed by Ivan. Thinking of the ability that Ivan has given me. As a result, the first task failed. Then didn't she live up to Ivan's trust and reward? A thought here. Natasha Romanoff bit her red lips lightly and said firmly. Chase. Yeah. Peter Parker agreed with the decision. Don't let Obadiah hurt innocent people. That's it. A thinking man. One thinks of ordinary people. The two chased after him. In the blink of an eye, the two figures disappeared completely. Phil Coulson agent and Posse came out of the warehouse. Not that Phil Coulson didn't want to help. But in the battle just now, as a normal person, he really couldn't help. There is also a gap between level 9 agents and level 9 agents. If you can help, he and the rest of the people probably will too. But according to the situation just now, going up is also a death sentence. Bullets can't penetrate Iron Overlord's steel armor at all. Paz looked at Natasha Romanoff's valiantly leaving back, and asked in an envious tone. Is that red-haired agent also from your shield? Yes, Phil Coulson replied though, but there was also a bit of uncertainty and confusion in his tone. Natasha Romanoff, she became too strong. Phil Coulson agent thought about SHIELD's agent combat power ranking. For now, Natasha Romanoff can already become the most powerful SHIELD agent just by virtue of her performance. Incredible. At this moment, the little pepper suddenly reacted. According to what Obadiah said, that arc reactor is Tony's. He is in danger now. Exclamation mark. Hearing this sentence, Phil Coulson reacted. Come with me. Phil Coulson waved his hand, called all the agents and wanted to rush towards Tony's house. But everyone came to the car and found out. Just now, Iron Overlord shot. Already wrecked all their cars. Either the tire is broken, or the engine is worn out. Or some simply fried. Almost none of them can be driven. Potts immediately took out his mobile phone to call the driver Happy. But the phone just got through. The telephone voice is forced to come in. Little Pepper, do you miss me? Huh, with the sound of getting a call on the phone. A red and yellow steel armor flew from the sky. Bang. Then a handsome one fell to the ground on one knee. Then why not float it? Because the energy of this eliminated arc reactor is less than 30%. Tony didn't look very good at the thought of a fight later. If you hit and hit, there will be no energy. Then his steel armor is an iron shell toy. But Obadiah still has nearly 90% of the energy of the arc reactor that he robbed. So, Tony has to figure out a way to take out the Iron King before his energy runs out. Great Tony, you're fine. Seeing that Tony was okay, Little Pepper immediately rushed up and hugged him happily. Phil Coulson stood there smiling honestly. I'm definitely fine. Tony patted Pepper on the back and comforted. I'm Tony Stark, the genius Iron Man. You'll be fine. Pepper was about to cry in Tony's arms. But she suddenly thought of something. Pushing Tony Stark away sharply. Hurry up and help. There's a SHIELD agent and a man in a spider battlesuit fighting the Iron King driven by Obadiah. They gained an advantage here. Obadiah controlled Iron Overlord to go outside and wanted to take people as hostages. They chased them out. What? Tony was dumbfounded, thinking he was going to fight alone. Then start a desperate fight with Obadiah. But I didn't expect that someone had already fought with Obadiah. SHIELD agent. Tony looked at Phil Coulson agent silently. Can the SHIELD agent be able to fight Obadiah for so long to gain an advantage and catch up? What are you kidding? Who else is wearing a spider battlesuit? Phil Coulson agent knew what Tony meant by looking at it. But he is also Phuket. So I can only reply with a wry smile. It's Natasha Romanoff and Peter Parker, both of whom know Superman in black. What? This time Tony was surprised again. The two chasing after, turned out to be acquainted with Superman in black. No wonder then. Tony, who didn't understand at first, immediately understood after hearing this answer. Say it sooner. It hurts to guess for a long time. As soon as I heard that both of them knew Superman in black. Tony felt instantly that going to a fight wouldn't be a big deal. He patted Pepper on the shoulder. You wait for me here, I'll come when I go. Done. Tony sprayed his hands to the ground and flew away immediately. And earlier on the other side, after Natasha Romanoff and Peter Parker chased out, Obadiah has controlled the Iron Overlord and has come to stand on the road. He blocked T-Bawang between the two roads. Immediately. A lot of slamming brakes sounded aside. Bang, 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 but with so many cars braking suddenly, a collision is inevitable. Ha ha ha. T-Bawang saw that the car stopped. He walked towards the nearest car. Come to the side of the car. The steel arm grabs on the door and pulls again. Bang. Immediately, the metal door was pulled away and thrown aside. Ah, it turned out that there were children in the car. They screamed in panic when they saw the brutality of the Iron Overlord. Don't worry, I just take you as hostages, ha 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 ha. Obadiah laughed wildly, not caring at all. It's all right, the public sector of the Stark Group will deal with covering up all these accidents, you are just a serial car accident. As he said that, he grabbed the steel plate arm that manipulated T-Bawang towards the child. No. A figure from a distance came hurriedly. Peter Parker shoots the cobweb with both hands, wrapping the Iron King's entire back. Then he put his feet on the foundation of the road and pulled back with all his strength. The Tieba dynasty stretched out his hand to the children. But only halfway through the hand is not enough. You bloody bug. Obadiah's anger suddenly came up again. He manipulated the Iron Man to get up, turn around, grab the cobweb, and then try to drag Peter Parker over. But Peter Parker was quick. He immediately threw his hands away and released the cobweb in his hands. Bang! The Iron Overlord pulled hard. The result was an empty one. Instead, he was thrown by his own gravity and leaned against the hood of the car. With the angle of view tilted upwards, Obadiah knew now. I've been tricked by this bug again. I want them to bury you with me. In the end, Obadiah, who was impatient, was finally stimulated to go mad. He braced himself against the hood of the car. The machine gun with both hands raised then wanted to pull the trigger at a nearby car. Don't even think about it. Natasha Romanov saw an opportunity in the back and rushed over. She took out the grenade and the attachments that could be attached, and then rolled over from the top of the car behind the Iron King. Then he quickly came to Tibawang's feet, and tied the grenade to his injured left leg together with the rope attachment. And at the moment of retreating and withdrawing, Natasha Romanoff also took out the high-voltage electrode and threw it at the Iron King. Although I don't know whether it will work or not, but for the time being, I can only use it first to see the opportunity. The grenade exploded. The electrodes release high-voltage electric current. Bang! Tibawang's left leg couldn't bear the damage any longer, and suddenly knelt on the ground. There is no left leg for his size. Suddenly it became a big steel target. Good chance. Peter Parker's eyes lit up when he saw that Iron King lost his action ability. He shot cobweb at a nearby billboard. Then he pulled himself up hard. A figure flew up. Then after the kinetic energy is gone, he fell again in a perfect parabola. Gravity accelerates much faster than it rises. Peter Parker gathered the 8 spears sharpened on his back in front of him, and then stabbed Obadiah in the transparent tempered glass in the middle of the Iron Overlord. Obadiah looked up and definitely spotted Peter Parker too. He hurriedly controlled the Iron Overlord and wanted to walk away. But he suddenly remembered that Iron Overlord could no longer move. Immediately, Obadiah had an epiphany, and immediately raised his arm to block the glass above his head. Humph! Natasha Romanoff saw this and knew that it was time to do it. She flashed to the Iron Overlord's side with vigorous steps. Then both hands grabbed one of the Iron Overlord hand. Then he used his 2 feet to push back on the Iron Overlord body. It's just you. Obadiah smiled dismissively when Natasha Romanoff pulled his arm. A woman who wants to compare her strength with the Iron Overlord. But the next moment he was dumbfounded. Obadiah slowly controlled the Iron Overlord arm to protect it on the glass cover. But when Natasha Romanoff's all-out push out, his arms moved outwards involuntarily. How is this possible? Obadiah was dumbfounded. How can you possibly have such power? A woman. How could she actually break the Iron Overlord arm? How is this possible? This is not true. It can't be true. But that's what it is. Natasha Romanoff gritted his teeth, his feet, hands, and tight, rounded legs in full force. Impossible. Obadiah looked at Peter Parker, who was about to be stabbed to the top of his head. In a panic, he tried to cover the top of his head with one hand. But the area of one hand is simply not enough. And little Spider-Man only needs to smash into a small spot. But the Iron King was broken off by Natasha Romanoff after an arm. I don't know how many times the exposed area is enough for Peter Parker. Obadiah cried out in despair. Next moment, Peter Parker's sharp 8 spears slammed into the clear tempered glass. Kang, accompanied by huge amounts of harsh, sharp cutting collisions sounded. The 8 spears plunged into Obadiah's desperate cry. Suddenly, the world seemed to tighten. Obadiah slowly opened his eyes and closed his eyes in fear. I'm alive. He looked at the strengthening glass above his head. It was found that the 8 spears were only 2 centimeters away from his head. Ha 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 ha. Obadiah laughed madly this time. I also have to thank Tony for this material. I will go to his grave next year to mourn him. Gone. Little Spider-Man scolded angrily when he saw this. He just wanted to keep going down. But Tibawang was already smashing his fists at him. There is no way. Peter Parker could only pull out 8 spears and jump off the Iron King's head. Natasha Romanoff, see here. Immediately, he also gave up the steel arm in his hand to dodge. Tisk, Natasha Romanoff gave Tibawang a disgusting look, it's really troublesome. Ha ha ha, the Iron Overlord, who escaped from death, burst out laughing. Would you like to thank Tony too? Yes, you're going to die soon, so I'll let you bury you with Tony later. Boo, bang. At this moment, a particle light cannon suddenly shot on the broken glass cover of Iron Overlord. At the same time, a red-yellow steel battle armor that was much more refined and better looking than Tibawang slowly fell. Thank you. Thank me for what? Tony Stark asked curiously in the armor. Would you like to introduce me to Superman in Black? Just a small thank you. Inside the Iron King, Obadiah's head was pierced with shards of smashed glass. Several streaks of blood flowed slowly from the top of his head. After seeing Tony, Obadiah was full of disbelief at first, and then a deep despair. He can't beat Natasha Romanoff and Peter Parker. Not to mention that there is now an Iron Man added. This is for him. It's like a dead end. But Obadiah suddenly lost his madness. He lowered his head, his eyes shining with determination, and he didn't know what he was thinking about. Tony, Obadiah said slowly, are you going to surrender? Tony raised his hands and shook his head. To the extent you are to me, I do not accept surrender. Alas, Obadiah played the emotional card. From the beginning to the end, I never thought of getting to where I am today. The Stark Group is thriving in my hands and making more and more money, why can't you just be a playboy? Tony shook his head. Have you ever thought about what happened after you sold Stark's missiles to the Middle East and Afghanistan? You're making a fortune in war, you're making money in people's lives. Then why are you developing these weapons? Obadiah roared suddenly. Aren't you developing these weapons to sell them? Ah. Inside the steel armor, Tony sighed. In the beginning, I just wanted to show my talent and prove that I am a genius. If you keep hiding it from me, I don't even know. But since the moment you paid the terrorists to kidnap me, no one can explain it. If it weren't for Superman in Black, I might not be standing here talking to you now, but would have died in Afghanistan. Superman in Black. Obadiah showed a miserable smile. It's Superman in Black again. Superman in Black again. It's him again. Obadiah gasped. Don't you think that he is behind all this? Is your present, and future all under his calculations? Aren't you worried that one day you will be like me? Obadiah looked at everyone earnestly. No one seemed to care about him. The air seemed to fall into silence. Just a few crows flew past in the sky. Why? Obadiah glared at the three. Why? At this time, Peter Parker said speechlessly while standing on top of a car. So far, only we have been helped by Ivan, and we have never given back to Ivan. Wait. At this point, Tony Stark suddenly interrupted little Spider-Man. Who did you just say? Ivan. Obadiah just said it was Superman in Black. Exclamation mark. Peter Parker gasped. He immediately covered his mouth, realized that he had said something wrong, and said Ivan's real name outside. He could know that Ivan is a black-clothed Superman, and he just guessed it. Look, Natasha Romanoff got Ivan's favor. It turned out to be so strong tonight. Plus what Ivan said earlier and the reactions of Natasha Romanoff and S.H.I.E.L.D. He, who has been living by Ivan's side all the time, definitely guessed it at this time. Definitely. Ivan didn't hide it on purpose, just didn't make it clear. But Peter Parker just found out tonight. The result was less than 2 hours. That said it out. That's why Ivan didn't tell Peter Parker his true identity at the time. It's not that Peter Parker can't know, and intentionally hides it from him. But his mouth is too big. Often said without noticing. Now Peter Parker knows he's slipping his tongue. But it's useless. Tony is so smart. As soon as he turned his head, he immediately understood why he came. Could it be that Ivan is the Superman in Black? Heard Tony Stark already knew. Natasha Romanoff shook her head slowly, and she put her hand on her forehead helplessly. Parker. Peter Parker was embarrassed for a while, and could only say shyly, anyway, Tony Stark will know sooner or later, right? Look at Peter Parker's eyes for help. Tony winked his eyes knowingly and secretly compared okay. That's right, I'm about to investigate it anyway. It's really fast, it's just a little bit short. Actually, he quickly found out a hair. His own palladium poisoning, warframe upgrades, and a whole bunch of other things have already screwed him up. There's no time to do everything. Natasha Romanov shook her head helplessly. It was none of her business anyway. How will love be then? She only needs to complete the task of Iron Overlord. But look at the other side. It's totally useless to look at his plans to provoke infighting. Even after everyone has a better relationship, Obadiah's heart can simply be told in the misery of misery. He secretly raised his arm. I want to shoot at people. In the process of Tibawang's arm being raised, he was pulling the trigger to shoot at the past. But the arm is moving. What about machine guns? Click. Click. Out of ammo. Everyone turned their heads and looked at Obadiah, whose eyes showed despair everywhere. That's horrible. It was so miserable. But it's all self-inflicted. Bang. Obadiah completely put down the Iron Overlord arm and slammed it on the ground. At the same time, he also began to speak slowly. Tony, I know I brought it all on myself. You finally understand. Tony nodded. But you have to face the consequences. Right. Peter Parker agreed. Ivan said that what you do, you have to take responsibility for yourself. I know. Obadiah took advantage of the blood on his face. He tried his best to look miserable and weak and said to everyone, I volunteered to take all the consequences, but I'm stuck. Can you come and pull me out of it? Speaking of which, Obadiah's fingers slowly moved to a button covered by a transparent cover. And the button above has also been secretly opened by him. The button was scarlet as a whole, as if it was extremely dangerous, and it must not be pressed. Yes, Tony glanced up and down at Obadiah. Although he doubted that Obadiah was plotting something. But he can't see it now. But he wouldn't be stupid, and he was really close to Obadiah. Asterisk asterisk. Obadiah looked at Tony and pleaded. His tone was full of pity and despair. Tony shook his head, and although his face was sullen, he wasn't ready to go. Seeing that Tony was indifferent, Obadiah immediately looked at Natasha Romanoff. But what about Natasha Romanoff? She just doesn't have a gun now. Otherwise she would have shot Obadiah from that broken hole. So Natasha Romanoff is simply not possible here. At last, Obadiah can only hope for Peter Parker. Those pleading eyes were fixed on Peter Parker. This made Peter Parker feel a lot of pressure. Save. Still not helping. Peter Parker's subconscious is not saving. Because Ivan said, I am responsible for what I have done. And just now Obadiah wanted to slaughter ordinary people. As a result, if he loses now, he wants everyone to let him go. Peter Parker shook his head. Even if he is very kind, this is impossible. There is no one who has been deceived by himself. Obadiah took a deep breath. He put away his pitiful eyes, and his eyes gradually became fierce and desperate, and he also held a mortal attitude. His hand slammed hard on the scarlet button. Since you are so powerful, then bury with me. Bang. But before he pressed, all of Peter Parker's hair stood on end. Although he didn't know why, he had already guessed that it was something that Obadiah could only do in front of him. He waved his hands towards Natasha Romanoff and Tony Stark. Go back. Obadiah has a problem. Natasha Romanoff still has some trust in Peter Parker. Especially since they're currently in Ivan's camp. So even Natasha Romanoff doesn't know why Peter Parker shouted that. But she still dodged and jumped back. But when she thought it was safe, Peter Parker pulled the cobweb and jumped farther. Natasha Romanoff frowned slightly, or immediately speed up and evacuate to a farther place. And what about Tony? He stared at the two who ran away in a blink of an eye. Tony was about to shout out what was going on. As a result, he bowed his head. What he saw was Obadiah with mortal eyes. Immediately, he seemed to understand something even if he didn't know the reason. Tony Stark suddenly had his hands and feet facing down. And shouted in the armor. JARVIS. Max power on. Straight up flight. JARVIS did. But still reminded from the perspective of the system. Sir, the remaining energy of this eliminated arc reactor can only provide 30 seconds of full flight. Enough. Hurry up. Crimson energy spurted out from the arms and legs of the armor. Tony pulled the power of the armor to the extreme and escaped from here. Let's die together, Tony Stark. As a result, he just took off for a second or two. Boom! A huge amount of flames covered Obadiah's dying words. Residents in a radius of several kilometers even heard the loud noise. Whoa, whoa! The glass of the building near the center of the explosion was even shattered. The flames quickly enveloped Tony's armor. There was even a small mushroom cloud rising over the road. Single quote. Peter Parker crouched on the billboard, looking at the flames in shock. The light from that flame illuminated everything around him. Obviously in the dark, Peter Parker and Natasha Romanoff even sprinkled with light. After hearing the explosion, Natasha Romanoff also stopped. She looked back at the small mushroom cloud that eventually formed from the explosion of flames. I'm glad I wasn't there. The diameter of the explosion is at least tens of hundreds of meters. If Natasha Romanoff didn't run halfway through, it would still be affected. Fortunately, she followed Peter Parker a long way. Romanov agent. At this time, Phil Coulson rushed over with the agents. They looked at the explosion cloud and shocked roar, "Everyone is all right." Little Spider-Man and Natasha Romanoff just shook their heads and said nothing. Only then did Potts react after seeing it. "Where's Tony? Where is he?" Hearing what Little Pepper said, Peter Parker reacted. He looked around quickly, but found no sign of Tony. "Where's Mr. Stark?" I reminded him. "He's in the smoke." At this time, Natasha Romanoff reminded by watching the flame cloud. Everyone looked at flame. A figure with thick smoke flew out of the small mushroom cloud, and then staggered towards the crowd. Boom! After the armor lands, exclamation mark. Tony knelt on the ground, quickly opened the helmet of the armor and coughed. "You're choking," Peter Parker asked in surprise. "How is that possible?" Tony shook his head. "There is an air circulation system in the armor." I was shocked. Feeling uncomfortable in the chest, Tony Stark stood up, gasping for breath. "Tony." The Little Pepper ran over immediately after seeing it. "I'm fine, just a little stuffy in my chest." Tony waved his hand. Then looked at Peter Parker and apologized. "Sorry, didn't listen to the warning, otherwise I wouldn't be like this." Peter Parker shrugged. "It's fine, I can understand, it's the first time we meet, there's no way to feel at ease." Tony Stark nodded, giving Peter Parker a thumbs up. The thumbs up is an encouragement to Peter Parker. That's how he likes to help good people. Everyone is thankful that they didn't get hurt much. But only Natasha Romanoff, looking in the direction of the city's college town, froze. Definitely, she wasn't too worried about Ivan's safety either. Ivan is so powerful after all. Hulk was beaten by Ivan before. But at the end of the day, Natasha Romanoff is a little worried. Phil Coulson came over and sighed in that direction too. There's only one question left, and hopefully there won't be any surprises. Air. There was silence in the air. Natasha Romanoff ignored him. Phil Coulson nodded. "I think too much. With Superman's ability, there is nothing that can't be solved for the time being. I hope the city suffers less damage." This sentence is quite right. The one from Obadiah just blew himself up. It will definitely have a great impact on the society of tomorrow. Almost met. What will be lively on the internet tomorrow? Natasha Romanoff, Peter Parker, Tony Stark will officially enter the public eye. The same goes for Banner's Hulk. And Ivan, needless to say, he has already exploded on the internet. The supernatural ability changes from one person to many. How many people will there be in the future? Nobody knows now. But one thing everyone can be sure of, including the citizens of society. The world is starting to mess up. In the future, the topics on the internet and the topics discussed by everyone in reality will no longer be scandals about who and who are, and where there will be a disconnection of the internet, water, and power. It's all about the various paranormal events. And what happened to which superhero? Phil Coulson sighed. Don't know if it's good or bad. With Obadiah dead, Tony and Pepper hugged passionately. A group of agents made phone calls and went up to clean the battlefield to clean up the battlefield. The matter about the Iron Overlord has finally come to an end. Hi. At this point, Peter Parker swings over to Phil Coulson and Natasha Romanoff. "We've solved it, go to Ivan's place to help him." Heard to help Ivan. A movement flashed in Natasha Romanoff's eyes. But think about the level of deterrence on the battlefield over there. Natasha Romanoff still sighed inwardly. If we can't help, we might be doing it a disservice. How? Peter Parker asked in surprise. Who is Ivan fighting? That's when Phil Coulson interjected. The Army, Hulk, and the agent just received news that a new mutant giant creature similar to Hulk has been added. Phil Coulson speaks one unit each. That is a level of combat power that is unimaginable for normal people. Especially the news that just came from the frontline agent. A soldier in the military suspected of being named Bronsky turned into a big guy similar to Hulk. Thinking of this, Phil Coulson felt troubled. A Hulk is a world problem. Not to mention two Hulks. If these two Hulks fight, Phil Coulson agent's mouth twitches. If this fights, how much will be rebuilt in the New York City after the fact? But what he didn't expect was, Peter Parker became more eager after hearing this. Then we should help. Peter Parker was restless. If Ivan gets into a fight with these two, shouldn't we help? We can help from a distance. Speaking, Peter Parker also stretched out his hands to make the appearance of spinning silk. Seeing this, Natasha Romanov pursed her lips and thought, how can you grow without going through hardships? Ivan gave herself such a powerful ability. If she ruined it, she could commit suicide by jumping into the sea. Roar. Natasha Romanov let out a long breath. Finally nodded to confirm. Go. Hear Natasha Romanov allow it. Peter Parker was overjoyed, and when he spat out cobweb, he was about to float over. But when he turned around, Natasha Romanov was walking the other way. Isn't Ivan over there? Natasha Romanov was speechless for a moment, ignoring him and walking straight towards the car. Phil Coulson said helplessly beside him. It's several kilometers away from there. Are you sure you want to swing over there? Peter Parker. Wait for me. Tony saw that Peter Parker and Natasha Romanov were both looking for Superman. He was in a hurry and waved quickly. Wait for me too, I'll go back and change the energy source. At the moment near the university town. Along with Banner, he was carried to the helicopter by a group of soldiers. Banner seemed to sense something and woke up leisurely. Looking at the fixed rope tied to his body, Banner looked at General Ross with a wry smile. If I want to transform, these straps that can pull over a ton are useless. We also have strong tranquilizers. General Ross snorted. It can instantly silence an elephant. It's useless. Banner shook his head. He already knew it now. The drug Mr. Lan injected him didn't make Hulk go away. Instead, it made Hulk more integrated with him. And also fell into an evolutionary slumber. Oh, Banner sighed inwardly. If this is the case, then exercise the ability of the Beast Spirit Walker well in the future, and strive to be completely integrated with Hulk. Sudden, Banner frowned. He wanted to turn his head to look in the direction behind the helicopter. But because of the problem with the fixed belt, he has almost no room to move, let alone move. General Ross, there is a problem with Mr. Lan, there is a problem with your soldiers. Is there a problem with my soldiers? Ross smiled contemptuously. He thought about it, and except for Bronsky, all the other soldiers absolutely obeyed his orders. Wait, what about Bronsky? Ross frowned. He looked at the liaison beside him and asked. Where's Bronsky? Where's Bronsky? Where is he? Opening square bracket exclamation mark quote. Excuse me, may I ask? The liaison immediately contacted the soldiers' headsets. After getting a reply, the liaison reported immediately. Soldiers reported that Bronsky was still in the lab and didn't come out. What? Rose's brow furrowed tightly. In fact, Bronsky's merit is very high. So high that he was second only to himself among all the people present. But Bronsky was simply too aggressive and bellicose. So he would rather be a soldier leading the team than a general commanding in the rear. But that's what caused it. Bronsky was injecting a fake gene-strengthening agent and suddenly became extremely belligerent. And frantically looking for power. He will not. General Ross was about to start guessing. Exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark. A roar suddenly shocked everyone present. Untie me now. Banner frowned. The soldier looked towards General Ross. After hesitation for a long time, Ross nodded in agreement. The soldiers hurried up and untied Banner's straps. But the potent sedative still clung to his palms. After not being restrained by those straps, Banner walked to the hatch of the helicopter and drove down. A black-gray giant figure smashed through the wall of the building and rushed out of the street. It's full of muscles. The dark gray skin is ugly and disgusting. But the bone spurs in some joints make it look combative. What kind of creature is this? General Ross came to the hatch and looked down. It is Abomination, a product of multiple mutations following a genetic breakdown. Abomination after bursting out of the street. It was delirious and frantically destroyed everything that could be destroyed around it. Trash cans, cars, phone booths, billboards, shop signs and more. It lifts a car that weighs several tons. Then slammed into the store on the street. Exclamation mark. The car was smashed by a huge force. The flames engulfed an entire store in an instant. People were running around in panic. But some people were so frightened when they saw the hideous appearance and didn't know what to do. Where's Hulk? Get him out. Abomination lifted a car again and threw it violently towards the crowded place. Exclamation mark. Let Hulk come out and fight me. Exclamation mark. Hurry up. Disgusting voices echoed around. Even if everyone in Ross is sitting in the helicopter, they can hear its roar. Seeing this, Ross slowly closed his eyes. Ruined. Bronsky is technically his man. But his people turned into mutant creatures to wreak havoc in the city and kill countless people. Then he was almost done. If the past can still be hidden. But this time the movement of hatred was too great to end well. Just as they were watching, the hatred that Bronsky has begun to kill. I don't know how many cars were smashed. But the most important thing is human life. In New York, a violation of life is a crime. And the Abomination almost nailed Ross to prison. It's time for a military court. He may be sentenced to hundreds or even thousands of years and let him sit to death. But there seems to be a way to salvage it. General Ross slowly turned his head and looked at Banner. Banner shook his head. It's temporarily unavailable. Can't get out. As soon as Ross heard this, his anger rose instantly. He grabbed Banner by the collar and roared. Why did Banner come out when we caught you? Why did your Hulk come out when we were fighting? Why can't your Hulk come out at this time? Banner pushed Ross's hand away. It's not that you are forcing me, chasing me everywhere. I will find Mr. Lan who wants to make the potion that will make Hulk disappear. As a result, now not only has it been made Abomination, Hulk has fallen into a slumber even stronger. Bang! General Ross punched the iron wall. He grabbed Banner's collar with one hand. Now you say Hulk's gone. Good. Ross pulled out the gun from the soldier next to him and placed it on Banner's head. Since it can't get out, now is a good time to let you die. If it can't get out, you have to die. Then you shoot. Treated like this by Ross. Even the honest Banner was angry. He took Rose's pistol and actively pressed it on his head. You can try shooting. Although I don't know if Hulk will save me. Once it's passive and goes into a manic state, then 2 abominations will appear in New York. Hear this. General Ross's face was completely unsightly. After hesitation for a long time, he could only put away the gun angrily, and continued to observe the hatred while thinking of a way. Sudden, he had a flash of light. He immediately turned his head and grabbed Banner's arm and asked, "Do you know Superman?" Banner frowned when he heard Ivan. But he wouldn't lie and say he didn't know. So Banner nodded. Great. General Ross was overjoyed, and he immediately ordered in the tone he was accustomed to. Get out Superman and get it out of here. These Banners frowned even more. But at the same time, he also instantly disliked Ross a lot. Banner shook his head and turned his head away. Only he ordered me, what is your general's identity in his eyes, be careful when you speak. What did you say? Ross gripped Banner's arm tightly. I let you ask him to come out. Anyway, you have to let him come out and get rid of this abomination. At the moment Ross was going crazy. He has no choice. And what Banner just said was the only way. So he was urging Banner violently in an almost threatening way. If you don't let Superman come out, I'll kill your former colleagues. Your friends. Your relatives. Anyway, let the hatred go on like this, and eventually I'll have to die. Suddenly, I heard this sentence. The disgust in Banner's eyes was barely concealed as he looked at Ross. As I said, your identity is nothing in his eyes, and I am the same in his eyes. You, me, and everyone here, and no one in this world can order him. He does what he wants. What can you do? This hatred can be eliminated if he wants to, and he can be eliminated if he doesn't want to, and what can you do? Ah! The honest Banner almost yelled at Ross. He pointed to General Ross's nose and cursed. "You're going to be crazy now. Superman will still live tomorrow, and you." Banner gave Ross a stern look. "Wait for court-martial and squat to death in jail. You fool." Ross was furious when he heard this. He picked up the pistol and was about to pull the trigger at Banner. But the next moment, a golden light streaks across the sky. Ivan Strengthening's heat sight cuts the helicopter in half through the middle of the helicopter. And it was separated from the muzzle in Ross's hand. "Ha ha." Ivan, who had finished watching the play, was suspended in the air and laughed contemptuously. "Shield is not qualified to invite me to join, just because you want to order me." Zzz. The helicopter separated by the heat sight suddenly turned into two halves and fell towards the ground. This is at an altitude of several hundred meters. The debris of the helicopter fell, and the people inside would definitely not survive. Ross and Banner begin to free fall in the air. Ivan flew down gently. But only Banner was mentioned. Rose desperately reached out to Ivan. While Ivan was holding the banner, he just silently watched him fall freely. "I'll let you go once, I won't let you go a second time." Exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark. Straight Zhao's lift fell to the ground. It suddenly turned into a huge explosion of raging fire. And Ross, he can only be bombed and not even DNA will be left behind. Ivan flew to the roof of a building. Then loosened Banner's collar and let his feet fall to the ground. Slap. Banner suddenly stumbled and almost lost his footing. He supported his chest, bent over and supported his knees, panting heavily. It was really exciting just now. Banner breathlessly admired. Someone like Ross, who doesn't take human life seriously for his rights. Ivan is wearing a black super battle suit. Go to the top of the building and stare not far away. Abomination is still destroying. Life is also disappearing one by one. Ivan knows. He knows it all. He also knew in his heart that he would save them and destroy the haters. He seems to have changed. Human life is fragile. It is important to look at each individual. Then Ivan will be extremely tired. So he seems to gradually see human life as a whole. Will this cause many casualties? Not much, especially when compared to the whole of New York. That's not much more. But what about the whole Earth? Just a drop in the bucket. But is this contempt for life? It doesn't seem to be. Because his heart will still go to the stage, rather than stand idly by. Roar. Ivan let out a slow breath. Let's attribute these problems to the side effects of templates. Homelander in the TV series is not afraid of anything, but is afraid of being intruded by the internet. He not only despised life, but also liked the pursuit of this group of lives. Really interesting. He looked at the banner behind him. Ivan took a step forward and fell into the air, then flew straight away. Take it as a hero debut. Where is Hulk? Exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark. Let him come out and fight me. Exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark. Abomination is ravaging the city like crazy on the streets. It speaks every word, about to smash a bunch of stuff. It seems to be stuck to the rhythm. At this time, a car stopped in the distance with sudden braking. Natasha Romanoff and Peter Parker both opened their doors and got out to watch the apocalyptic scene. Oh, it's so ugly. Peter Parker felt disgusted when he saw the hatred. Not to mention Peter Parker, Natasha Romanoff felt disgusting to see it. Hate the ugliness of the face, like a piece of rotting meat. The black and gray skin all over his body was like black water smeared on his body. Peter Parker looked around. Where's Ivan? Looking at us. Natasha Romanoff looked up at the sky. Peter Parker looked over. It turned out that Ivan was really waiting for them in the sky not far from them. Peter Parker and Natasha Romanoff ran past. Hi, Ivan, our mission is complete. Peter Parker happily reported after seeing Ivan. Ivan nodded, looking at Natasha Romanoff. Obadiah blew himself up and died. Tony Stark's armor has no energy, he said he would go back and change the energy. Natasha Romanoff's report is more detailed. As for the battle situation, let me tell you the details. Obadiah's Iron King material is very strong. The weapons on my body can't penetrate. Peter Parker and I can only be in the diversion effect, and then Peter Parker uses the spider spear to break his defense. Natasha Romanoff tells the details. After listening, Ivan nodded. It's fine, it's all done. Natasha Romanoff smiled. Peter Parker was encouraged and smiled happily. But the next moment, they can't seem to laugh. Ivan slowly landed from the air and looked at the two of them. Do you know why I'm waiting for you here? Let's go together, Peter Parker said impatiently, looking at the disgust. Ivan shook his head. Natasha Romanoff suddenly had a bad feeling, putting Natasha Romanoff's smile a little stiff. This time Ivan smiled and stepped forward to rub her cheek. You're right. Ivan looked at the abomination that was still wreaking havoc. If I go, it will be gone soon, then its appearance will be meaningless, so, I am waiting for you here. It's about making its birth meaningful. No way. Peter Parker understood now. The corners of his mouth twitched slightly as he looked at Ivan. The two of us? Definitely not. There was a kind smile on Ivan's face. Didn't you say that Tony is coming too? You can try it together when he arrives. Definitely, in the event of a life-threatening situation, I will rescue you. Peter Parker's mouth twitched slightly. He turned to look at the abomination that was destroying in the distance. Suddenly, passion is not so important anymore. Natasha Romanoff recoiled a little at the sight of disgust. Please, this is the same mutant creature as Hulk. It's just that one is perfect, and the other is mutated. Although Ivan can easily solve them, but for myself, it is almost impossible. Natasha Romanoff has some headaches. Exclamation mark. At this time, a huge amount of explosion sounded. Everyone turned to look, and it turned out that a truck had been smashed by disgust. Abomination came out of the exploding flames. At the same time, there are also ordinary people rolling on the ground with flames burning on their bodies. At the moment, hatred no longer attacks ordinary people. It's always looking for cars and large facilities to wreak havoc on the city. It's like a monster entering the city. Seeing this, Peter Parker frowned tightly. Hesitation for a moment. Peter Parker turned to look at Ivan. I have to go first. Ivan nodded in agreement. Peter Parker is the most kind-hearted among them, understandably. See Peter Parker spinning away. Natasha Romanoff looked at Ivan. I won't let you down. I'm looking forward to it. Ivan smiles. Hearing Ivan's reply, Natasha Romanoff also rushed over. And the other side, after refilling the eliminated arc reactor with energy, Tony Stark had already left the villa and was flying towards the city center with maximum power. The voice of Jarvis resounded inside the armor. Sir, by invading cameras all over New York, the battlefield is near a college town, and the current combatants include a SHIELD agent and Spider-Man. Where's Superman? Tony asked. I'm looking for it. Jarvis had just finished speaking, but suddenly returned. Sir, Superman is far above your head, he's the one who showed up. Tony looked up. After magnifying the smart magnifier in the armor, I saw Ivan's figure. Okay, I know. After confirming the direction, Tony mustered up again and flew over. After coming to Ivan's side, Tony opened his visor and let out a long joking breath. I miss you so much more than when I saw a cover girl before. Ivan, what a hook-ate metaphor. Ivan looked at him angrily. Head tilted not far away. Natasha Romanoff, Peter Parker and Abomination about the upcoming battle. Go. Quote. Tony looked. Aren't you going? Is it necessary for you to go when I go? Yes. Tony nodded understandingly. Then what are you doing here? Tony asked again, confused. You can't ask me to do everything in the future. Ivan turned around and looked at Peter Parker, who was already spinning at hatred. They need to grow up, and they can't deal with small things like sneaking and robbing every day. I understand what you're saying, but... After listening to what Ivan said, Tony asked a little embarrassedly. Is that guy something the three of us can handle? Ivan's eyes moved. It seems, that is not enough to solve the hatred. Although the hatred did not leave Hulk, but now the hatred is not weak. Its size and strength are stronger than the three of them combined. Only, Ivan didn't seem to be able to destroy the hatred with just the three of them. It can only be said that it is more like a rubbing experience. So Ivan waved. Don't worry, when you can't hold on, I will take action, you just need to take care of the two of them. Okay. Tony shook his head helplessly. You only care about the two of them, and I don't care, alas. Finish the Tsunere's words. Tony seems to know he's a little squeamish. Therefore, Once the battle armor and helmet were combined, they flew away. All that was left was Ivan to let out a deep breath. That's disgusting, bah. And at the moment on the battlefield, Abomination is breaking off a large billboard and waving it around. Where the hell is Hulk? Let it out. Maybe Hulk isn't there. No one heeded his hatred all the time and was stunned when he suddenly heard the answer. He looked around and found no figure of the speaker. The next moment, pissed operator. A cobweb hit the disgusting feet and tied it to the fire hydrant beside it. This picture is as ridiculous as a toothpick tied to a big dog. Coax. Hate smiled disdainfully, raised his foot and twitched. It's ugly, but its power is not fake. With a kick of disgust. Pissed operator. The fire hydrant was uprooted and sprayed with water. Since it is downtown New York, the water pressure of this fire hydrant is very high. This also caused the spray to fly more than 10 meters, blocking all the sight of hatred. This is the plan of the CEFH spider. Frustrated while hating vision, Peter Parker moved from the roof to the front of the Abomination. Then it leapt forward, onto Abomination's shoulders. Get off. Disgusted to feel someone crawling on top of him. He reached out and grabbed it, but it was empty. Here, I hate what I wanted to say just now. Suddenly, several sharp tingling sensations spread all over the body. At the same time, Peter Parker on him was moving fast. It turned out that he used 8 spears. These sharp tails all plunged into the Abomination as they moved. Then, before the hatred adjusts to the sudden pain, Peter Parker saw the timing. Both hands squirted cobweb instead of cobweb together in the disgusted face. Immediately after, Peter Parker swam over the Abomination as he continued squirting cobweb. Layer after layer of cobwebs wrapped around the Abomination's head. Peter Parker knows that the Abomination is too big, and if you choose to wrap it around its entire body, the cobweb may not be enough. But just wrap the words around the head. Not only is it easy to wrap, but the effect is also good. First a few circles around Abomination's head. But the hatred felt that the figure on his body kept moving. It actually gave up blocking the spider web, and instead directly waved its fists directly towards the top of its head and body. Peter Parker was made to jump off it. But the cobweb in his hand has not been broken. Peter Parker fell to the ground and watched as the spider web in his hand lit up. He took a run on the ground. Just like that, it runs and wraps around the hated side. After you feel the speed is enough. He even jumped up and rimmed himself around like a yo-yo around the hated head. Woo, annoying bug. Because his vision was completely entangled with cobwebs, Abomination grabbed his hands around him indiscriminately. Suddenly, its big hands seemed to be grabbing some string. Immediately hate to understand something. Under the cobweb, its ugly mouth gave a hideous smile. Then suddenly grabbed the spider rope, turned around, and threw it to the side. Bang! Peter Parker was slammed into the building, and a burst of smoke filled the air. Peter Parker was still in the air just now, so he reacted in time, but he couldn't change his trajectory in the air at that time, and could only be thrown out in an instant. Smoke filled the building. Peter Parker has to lie down and rest for a while. Felt the annoying flies were gone. Abomination immediately began to rip the cobwebs from his face with his claws. But in the shadow of the night, a slender figure clenched a ready-made alloy dagger on the roof of the building, waiting for an opportunity. Seeing disgust with hands-on face ready to rip cobweb, Natasha Romanov smiled slightly. The opportunity has come. Abominations are large and powerful, so head-to-head combat never knew Natasha Romanov's plans. There was too much movement in little Spider-Man just now. She couldn't go up again, and could only prepare for a combo after Peter Parker stopped. As a result, the opportunity now comes. This is a great opportunity created by Peter Parker at the start. Natasha Romanov's round legs tensed as she leapt from the top of the building. Like the leap of faith in Assassin's Creed, her bright figure was like a sharp sword in the dark night falling quickly. And the target, it is the neck of hatred. That is the most critical part of all living things. All the control nerves need to pass there to give commands to the body. The figure fell quickly. Pissed, 2 forearm-length alloy daggers were directly inserted into the sides of Abomination's neck due to the acceleration force. Wow! The voice of hatred and pain came from within the cobweb. Although the sound is extremely dull, it is also very loud for normal creatures. But it's not over yet. Abomination's physical structure resembles an enlarged version of a human. So Natasha Romanoff knows where the muscles in the cervical spine are and how to avoid them. Where is the nerve and how to cut it? These Natasha Romanoffs know it. So, pissed, the daggers on either side of Abomination's neck were slashed hard by Natasha Romanoff. Immediately disgusted, I felt that my arms seemed to lack a lot of strength. At the same time, the shoulders and neck are warm. After that, I lost the feeling in many places. Your nerves are more resilient than an elephant's. Natasha Romanoff struggled to say a word during the fight. Here the nerve is cut. Natasha Romanoff quickly drew the dagger out. Then I want to slam into another key nerve area. After hating the gap to the point that something went wrong. Since its hands and back nerves were severed, it was no longer able to lift its hands above its head. There is no way to hate it but to turn around and hit the ground. Natasha Romanoff couldn't fight it like that. I can only regretfully put away the dagger and quickly jumped away. But the blow has been earned. It is equivalent to giving Abomination a weak buff. But Natasha Romanoff sighed inwardly. Its nerves are too strong. If normal people have ended, it still has the strength to move, and I don't know how its recovery ability is. Bang! Abomination didn't stand up straight after hitting the ground. Instead, he rolled around on the ground to prevent threats above his head. Because it can't see anything now. Natasha Romanoff stared at Abomination. It's starting to panic. Yes, without vision, it is very uncomfortable for creatures without special training. Especially after being severely attacked during this period. A sense of panic appeared in the hatred brain. Definitely, this emotional abomination is not known. Instead, it turns into another emotion. Natasha Romanoff uttered the word softly. Crazy. Chapter 51. Really, after struggling with hatred. It didn't immediately tear off the deep cobwebs wrapped around its face, but lowered its head and started to rush towards the surroundings frantically. Because as long as he goes on like this, neither Natasha Romanoff nor Peter Parker can get close to it. And it just needs to run farther and pull the cobwebs. I'm in trouble. At this moment, little Spider-Man stumbled out of the building and said in a low tone. Sorry, my reason. No, you're doing fine. Natasha Romanoff sternly looked at disgust. Little Spider-Man blames himself. It's because he realizes that the way he yo-yoed just now was so carried away. He could obviously tie it up with a swinging method. But for a short while, you get yourself into a dangerous place. But it's exactly what Natasha Romanoff said. Peter Parker did a great job. First, he was just a teenager. And unlike Natasha Romanoff, he doesn't have a lot of combat experience. So Peter Parker can do this, it is already very good. As far as the appearance of hatred is concerned, how many people dare to rush to the first battle? Peter Parker shook his legs and moved his body. Fortunately, his physical fitness is not weak, otherwise he would have been offline just now. Watching the hatred rushing around randomly, little Spider-Man scratched his head with a headache. What about this? We can't get close to it. Natasha Romanoff shook his head slightly. This situation is difficult to handle. Or force it to stop. Either wait for it to vent and run away before stopping. Peter Parker is now aware of these methods. But, Peter Parker frowned at Abomination. If he waits until he stops, how many cities will he destroy? Natasha Romanoff clenched her fist slightly. She knows. But she can't help it either. Just when the two were at a loss, a golden light descended from the sky, instantly cutting off half of the hated feet. Abomination was blindfolded by cobwebs and had no idea what was going on. But the excruciating pain in the foot wasn't fake. Missing half of a foot. The hatred instantly lost its heavy weight and smashed to the ground. Exclamation mark. Wow, its heavy body smashed the ground loudly. The concrete surface couldn't bear the force and collapsed. Stones, dirt, and dust covered the body of hatred, and it was very embarrassing. After a while, the hatred slowly got up. I felt a strong threat from above. Hate gritted her teeth and wanted to try again. But just when his palm was on the ground, he was about to rush in the direction of the unspoiled city. A golden light fell from the sky again. Pissed, this is not the sole of the foot, but the palm. Roar, he raised his hand in disgust. A fist file-size hole appears in the center of its palm. And with the speed at which the abomination heals quickly, the wound on this palm healed very slowly. Now Hate knows. This laser that fell from the sky, I don't know where it came from, or it ran away to the outside. Don't go to places that haven't been destroyed yet. Means can only stay where it has destroyed. Ow. Hate let out a low growl. In the face of this powerful threat, it can only retreat first. Great. Seeing this from a distance, Peter Parker jumped up with joy. And Natasha Romanoff pursed her lips. Still too weak. If Ivan gave her ability to exercise well, she might be able to deal with this abomination by herself. And now, she can't do it. I am still too weak. What about Shield 9 agents? Phil Coulson agent has absolutely nothing to do with this fight. Hill and Nick Fury are also only available on the base's official website. Even if Hawkeye isn't out on a mission, he'll be chased and beaten by Hate when he comes back. How can ADC beat a fighter? At the moment, what can you do with money? What about having power? Everyone's hopes are not all pinned on Ivan. If Ivan doesn't take action, the hatred can turn New York upside down and face a threat that no one can handle. But Ivan was able to set a rule calmly, and used his hatred as a living target that definitely had no threat to train them. And he also gave himself a very powerful ability. In the memories Ivan transmitted to her, Storm Girl is also very powerful. Powerful enough to fly, physically resist bullets, and control lightning. And at the moment myself, kind of like Storm Girl. In addition to physical fitness strengthening a lot. And after the inheritance of the martial arts master, the strength can kill the previous self in seconds. But these are for the strength of Storm Girl. Not even a single leg. Strength. Intoxicated. All this is given by Ivan. You must seize this opportunity. Natasha Romanoff at the moment. Words cannot describe it. The originally quiet sky in New York suddenly picked up the wind. Boom. Immediately afterwards, a red-yellow figure suddenly fell beside Peter Parker. Tony looked at Natasha Romanoff, who closed his eyes as if feeling the tranquility, looked at little Spider-Man and asked, "What is she doing?" Peter Parker quickly shook his head and said he didn't know. Tony crooked his mouth and thought for a while. Suddenly, he had an epiphany and whispered towards Peter Parker. "Have you both turned on Superman's magical engine?" Magic engine. Peter Parker almost jumped when he heard Tony say the word magic engine. But he suddenly remembered, if Ivan is the Superman in black, the one who helps Tony is Ivan. If that's the case, it's not surprising that Tony knows about the magic engine. As for Natasha Romanoff, I don't want to ask. Peter Parker thought about it and nodded to Tony. Is that so? Tony touched his chin with the steel armor. If so, no wonder. Maybe preparing something. Tony understands it this way. After all, the stuff inside the magic engine is amazing. No one can say for sure what to expect. Sir, her state, in an old Eastern saying, is called the state of epiphany. What? Tony frowned. What do you mean? Probably the strength will increase a bit after awakening, but the increase depends on the situation. Hearing this, Tony scratched his head with his steel arm. In these words of Jarvis, he only focuses on one thing. That is, when the opposite agent wakes up, its strength will increase. Tony is envious, but the other party also got the existence of the magic engine given by Ivan. So after going back and forth, Tony temporarily put Peter Parker, Natasha Romanoff, and himself in the same camp as Ivan. Since Ivan can sell her the magic engine, this means that Ivan trusts the Romanov agent. So what is there to doubt? It's a good thing that she can increase her strength. Thought here. Tony nodded and said to Peter Parker as if he was handing it over to me. Your name is Peter Parker, right, little Spider-Man? Yes, but they call me Spider-Man. Good little Spider-Man. Seeing that Peter Parker still wants to argue with himself at this time, Tony hurriedly pointed to the disgust that was rushing towards the other side after turning back in the distance. Let's take care of it. Let's see how the two of us cooperate. Definitely yes. Peter Parker was immediately taken astray by Tony's words. Then let's go. Go. That's it. Tony drove towards the abomination with little Spider-Man. Peter Parker swings the cobweb in the air. Looking at the trash being blown away by the wind under his feet, he wondered. Why is the wind getting stronger? The weather forecast I read before I went out was obviously not windy. Yes, it's a little weird indeed. Tony Stark said in the armor. I asked the JARVIS in the battle armor to intelligently re-intercept the weather data, and the result shows that the wind is still 1 to 2. But it's going to be level 3 to 4 now. Peter Parker asked suspiciously, looking at the growing wind. Is there a possibility? Tony guessed suddenly. This sudden wind is not brought by the weather, so the weather is still forecast 1 to 2. What brought that? Peter Parker asked. You asked a good question, I don't know either. Gradually, the two came to the side of hatred. At the moment it was hiding, waiting for the wound to heal quickly. The soles of its feet are already rapidly sprouting granulation. The hole in the palm is also nearly closed. Peter Parker looked at its neck and said in amazement, "Roar, its neck is already healed." The Romanov agent only heard it for more than 10 minutes. Hear the news. Tony frowned slightly. He already sensed that this would be a tough guy. Listen to little Spider-Man. Tony pulled Peter Parker aside. I can fly, so I'm going to harass him head-on, keep attacking him, and you need to help me by the side. Do you know how to play the assistant? You should have played the game. In short, help me disturb it, annoy it, torture it and hold it back. Then I'll take the opportunity to find its weak spot and attack it so we can beat it as much as we can. Have you understood? Peter Parker listened word for word, watching it act like a battle plan. He nodded excitedly. I understand, don't worry. Okay. Tony tapped Peter Parker on the shoulder and gave him an encouraging look. Then, he flew straight towards the hatred. Up bang. Because of the location in advance, Tony fired an energy cannon directly at the wriggling granulation on the soles of Abomination's feet. Pissed, black-gray blood splashes. The hatred, who had already torn the cobwebs, roared in pain. It stared at its gray eyes and looked up to find its target. As a result, Tony was wearing his suit of armor, and he just flew in the sky and looked at it. Hey Joker, why are you so ugly? Abomination was instantly irritated by Tony's sarcastic remark. It slammed into the air with both hands. Boo, bang. Tony suddenly flew higher. He also gave it an energy cannon. The hated head was stunned. It touched its head and immediately became angry. It jumped in place and slammed towards Tony. But Tony sped up and flew a little higher to get out of its attack range. Boo, bang, 0. Then add an energy cannon. The hatred suddenly exploded with anger. It turned to look around at what could be used. Big Rock, picked it up and threw it at Tony. With the intelligent calculation of JARVIS, Tony easily dodged. Car tires, or throw the past. Also hide. There are also billboards, cash registers, trash cans, streetlights and so on. Hate to see what to throw. But Tony dodged with ease. Look, this is the true portrayal of the tank's heart when the plane bombed the tank. What if you were the king of the land? You don't have the air defense and air attack ability, are you a fart? Exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark. The hatred was almost mad with anger. It jumped violently towards the building next to it. Then in Tony's surprised eyes, it clawed its feet and hands on the window steps of the building. Then he jumped sharply towards Tony again. Abomination hit Tony with his hideous, frying pan file-size fist. But still empty. Tony raised his head sharply, panting from within the armor. Dachobai, I can assure you that when you were the closest to me just now, I was almost caught by you. Tony shuddered at the thought of the fist that was bigger than his head. If this fist hits himself, it is estimated that it is almost the same as a tank shooting itself. Although he had been bombed once in Afghanistan, it was different. This fist was so close to him that it was more than one blow when caught. Afraid of being beaten up by a series of fat, roar, have a good time. Watching the hatred fall again, Tony let out a sigh of relief. Suddenly, in the process of hating the fall, a figure suddenly rushed out of the store and was preparing for the place where it fell. Peter Parker put up 8 spears, pointed it at Abomination and laughed. I learned this from you. Creatures without flight ability can hardly change their trajectory in the air. And at the moment Abomination is just right. Seeing this, Abomination immediately threw his fist at little Spider-Man while struggling as he fell in the air. Useful is there, but not much difference. With the acceleration of its weight, the Abomination quickly touched the ground. Pissed, accompanied by a dull pissed sound. AFL. Abomination fell instantly on the 8 spears that Peter Parker estimated to have pierced. The sharp ends of the 8 spears penetrated deeply into the body of Hate. And it's not even a hole, but 8 bloody holes. Hate growled weakly, but it still elbows in Peter Parker's direction. Facing the elbows of hatred. Peter Parker saw it, but he wanted to chase after it. Peter Parker took this opportunity to use the full force of the 8 spears to stick it out a little further. Pissed, roar, bang, but he himself was hammered away by the abominable weak elbow. But fortunately, before being hit by the abomination, Peter Parker's hands were horizontally in front of him to resist the attack. Little Spider-Man, Tony shouted morally a little worried. Romanov Stormgirl evolution. Quote. Peter Parker answered Tony in a low voice from a distance. The power of that just down is really not small. Even with a weak hatred, that one elbow knocked Peter Parker a dozen meters away. The power of this cannot be underestimated. It's okay to hear Peter Parker. Tony's anger came up because his teammate was injured. He glared at the wounded hatred. Now is the time to pursue the victory. Taste my Mark's armor in full force. After Tony finished softly in the armor, his arms were straightened at the abomination. At the same time, the shoulders of the armor also have 2 platforms. There are also 2 more miniature missiles on the sides of the 2 arms. The palm energy cannon is charging. All attacks are ready. JARVIS, I can't control so much firepower at the same time, help me control it intelligently. Like, sir. After giving orders to JARVIS, Tony smiled lightly after confirming that little Spider-Man would not be caught in the distance by fire. With full force, shish, boom boom boom. Technology is indeed the meat grinder in war. The firepower of such a small steel armor is so amazing. Under such a violent attack, abominations that were directly bombed in place had no choice but to curl up into a passive defense. Exclamation mark. At the moment, his originally loud roar wasn't as loud as the explosion. But it's far from over. The smoke of the explosion looks like a fake under the intelligent scanning of JARVIS. Many of the smart weapons on the Mark's suit automatically deliver precise strikes towards the abomination in the center of the smoke. The sonic solid bullets on the shoulders all shot towards the wound stabbed by Peter Parker. Tiny missiles, all blasting at Abomination's chest for maximum spread. The energy cannons in the palms all slammed into the hatred head to make it confusing. There are also many weapons fighting together. The fully armed Mark armor has even greater firepower than the army that Ross just brought. Boom boom boom, under strong firepower. The voices of hatred are getting smaller and smaller. I don't know how long it took. Tony finally stopped the fire cover, opened the armor mask and gasped. The wind in the vicinity is getting stronger and stronger, and it has reached level 4 and is blowing towards level 5. The sky also started to rain lightly. The raindrops splattered on Tony's face, making him feel a little cool. It's the first time I've played so well. Tony sighed looking at the smoke in front of him. Sir, due to the low energy storage limit of this arc reactor, the battle armor consumes a lot of energy, and only 49% is left. It doesn't matter. Tony panted, as long as the big guy is gone, you scan it. Scanning. The wind is getting stronger. The rain is also getting heavier. Because of this weather environment, the smoke and dust around him quickly began to disappear. When the smoke gradually dissipated, its figure slowly appeared. JARVIS also came out at this time. Sir, the situation seems to be a little bad. It seems to have an inferior evolutionary recovery for some reason. What? Tony stared at the disgust beneath his feet in shock. Wait until the smoke clears. The whole body of hatred has changed. The black-gray body became all black. The protruding bone spurs on the body also became longer and sharper. The toughness of the skin also seems to have improved a lot. More importantly, Abomination looked up at Tony with furious malice in his eyes. Click. Tony instantly closed the visor of Mark's armor. Next moment, Abomination also jumped in place at Tony at the same time. Jumped dozens of meters high. What, if it wasn't for Tony to dodge in time and not just pull up? The loathing just now caught him. Sir, it should be strangely enhanced in all aspects of his fitness, but the enhancement doesn't seem to be intact. Jarvis reminded Tony. Fine, Tony was a little puzzled. Next, inside the battle armor. Jarvis played the details of its discovery method to Tony's eyes. On the screen, although the physical fitness of hatred has improved a lot. But this improvement seems to have great side effects. For example, kind of like a potential breakthrough for damaging genes. Or use something irreversible taboo effect. In detail enlarged by Jarvis. The hideous skin begins to decay and slough off. And the peeled skin did not fall to the ground, but turned into black ash and was blown away by the strong wind and disappeared between heaven and earth. Sir, it's kind of like a genetic breakdown, and I'd recommend trying to hold it off until time comes to fruition. I see. Tony nodded. After seeing these details, Tony also knew that there must be irreversible consequences for the body of Abomination. Exclamation mark. Get off me, really. After failing to catch Tony Stark again. The madness in the hatred's eyes had a rotten aura. It's like the return of light from a dying person. And the hatred has grown more impatient. See this effect. Tony strengthened the thoughts in his mind even more. Pissed, Tony pushed the armor to fly to Abomination's head. Hey big ugly, come and catch your dad. Al. Although the consciousness of hatred was thin at this time, it was still extremely angry after hearing it subconsciously. It swooped towards Tony again. Tony hurriedly avoided delaying it too. At the same time, he also fired 2 palm cannons to mock him. Sir, the energy is less than 45%, and the palm energy cannon needs to be used less. I see. Tony constantly pulls the hate. And his armor energy is also falling a little bit. 40%, 35%, 30%. Sir, battle armor. I can see. Tony interrupted Jarvis's report directly. But knowing is knowing. Tony's firepower had also run out. At this time, there is no other attack method other than the palm cannon. What can we do about it? Should I go to Ivan for help later? This is too embarrassing. He also said that he would take good care of the 2 of them. But that's what takes care of it. At this time, a red and blue figure rushed over from the vicinity, drenched in the rain. Mr. She Stark. Before anyone arrived, Peter Parker shouted. I'm fine, let's hold it together. Ha ha ha. Seeing that Peter Parker came here, Tony Stark's confidence suddenly increased. Just hold on to it. Its genes are about to collapse. No problem. Pissed, Peter Parker spit cobweb, wrapped his disgusted feet and tugged hard. Although this time couldn't pull the hatred down, but it also made the hatred fall and did not jump up. Disgust turned his head and saw that it was this bug again. It roared angrily and kicked hard to throw Peter Parker away. But with previous experience, Peter Parker gave away the cobweb in his hand as soon as he saw Abomination lift his foot. The momentum created by the sudden lift of his foot almost made Abomination knock himself over. Bug. After knowing that he was being tricked by a monkey, he hated and became furious. Hey, Peter Parker raised his hand and waved as if saying goodbye, I won't make the same mistake twice. Nice little Spider-Man. Tony saw this encouragingly from the sky. Immediately after, the 2 of them began to play with hatred. At the same time, their cooperation is getting better and better. Armor has limits. Physical strength is also limited. After some time, Tony's armor power was dropping rapidly. 25%, 20%, 15%. Sir, if the energy of the armor is lower than 10%, it will be at great risk, and the remaining energy at that time will make you unable to evacuate smoothly. To shut up. Tony is also a little annoyed now. What bullshit evacuate? Peter Parker stands on the roof of a building. He was also hunched over his legs, gasping for breath. He is too tired. From Iron King to Abomination, from being injured twice to recovering. During such a long period of time, he has not rested except for the driving in the middle. Even a mutant Spider-Man has a limit on his physical strength. Peter Parker is sore all over now. His hands and legs were sore that he could hardly lift them up. And hatred cannot find in the end when the gene collapse. At the moment its skin has all come off. The whole body looks like a skinless giant from a horror movie. That ugly face combined with the exposed muscles was disgusting. Sir, according to this time, it will take at least 1 to 2 hours for the Abomination gene to collapse. I see. Tony was panting too. Although he controls the armor, his body is an ordinary person. He was also exhausted from such a long, high-intensity fight. If he was given a bed, he could even fall asleep on his back. What should I do? How can we hold on for a while longer? Tony looked to the sky. The wind is getting stronger. At the moment it has surpassed the level 5 gale. Peter Parker's cobweb then deviates if the target is too far away. The rain is also getting heavier. At the moment has changed from light rain to heavy rain. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Clear rain drips on Peter Parker's mask. He was already soaking wet. Plus the current fatigue. Peter Parker was cold, hungry, and tired. Tony Stark is not. He even added a mental exhaustion. Exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. Sudden, a huge amount of lightning strikes the sky above New York City. The lightning was fierce. It fell from the sky and hit the lightning rod at the top of the Stark building. That's really big, Tony sighed. Sir, although this thunderbolt is very big, I still want to remind you that this thunderbolt seems to be attracted by it. 5. Attracted to the top. Tony was a little confused. Sir, I don't know yet, but after meteorological inspection, the current charge on the cloud is not enough to form the volume of the lightning just now. Boom. Jarvis has just finished speaking. Then another thunder struck. Tony. And many more. Sudden. Tony Stark thought of something. He recalled the SHIELD agent just now. The SHIELD agent stayed there for so long after they left. Definitely, Tony was sure she wasn't going to run away. It is an SHIELD agent after all, so escape is impossible. Is that possible? Is she attracted to it? Tony ordered. Call the surveillance near the agent and see if it's her. After a while, Jarvis replied by switching the monitoring screen. Sir, the preliminary analysis is her. On the screen. Natasha Romanov closed her eyes. But there were dozens of arcs jumping all over her body. At the same time, a magnetic field seemed to form around her. Many unseen energies swirled around Natasha Romanov. To make Tony even more strange, the agent appears to be able to mobilize other natural elements. Not just lightning and gusty winds, because Natasha Romanov's winds are obviously bigger than they are. Sir, there are two natural forces reacting in her body, and these lightning bolts may be heralding something. Exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. While speaking, lightning fell from the sky again. Ivan also changed his spectator position and came to Natasha Romanov's side to watch. Exclamation mark. Exclamation mark. The gust of wind began to roar. The frequency of lightning is also getting faster. And the lightning was moving towards Natasha Romanov's position. Even the lightning rods of tall buildings nearby are useless. They seem to be scrambling to get to Natasha Romanov's side. Ivan looked up at the cloudy sky. He seemed to know something. At this time, a voice that shouldn't be here appeared not far from Ivan. Is an abomination. It didn't know why it touched it. At the moment the hate gene is still breaking down. First, after the skin on its surface decayed into nothingness, now its muscles are gradually disintegrating. It reached out to Natasha Romanov far away. Seems desperate to catch Natasha Romanov. Ivan looked at him, then at Natasha Romanov. As soon as the super brain analyzed it, he immediately understood the reason. Natasha Romanov is genetically evolving, and the whole person is walking in the direction of sublimation. And the hatred is breaking down in the gene, and the whole person falls in the direction of decay. So that's why Natasha Romanov is drawn to Abomination. Natasha Romanov at the moment is the fruit of Eden to Abomination. It seems that as long as you eat her, you can change yourself. But actually think more. Abomination is the product of the failed mutation of the Bronsky gene. So the genetic breakdown once started. No one can restore it. Until the gene collapse is completely completed, the whole person of hatred will also disappear into the dust of the universe. Ivan vaguely remembered that Angel Lang of Angel Civilization was just like that. Bang bang bang. At this point, hatred began to charge towards Natasha Romanov. Tony Stark and Peter Parker didn't know Ivan was here. So they shouted, "Stop it now! Exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark." Sudden. In their gaze, a giant with a huge body and an extremely ugly appearance flew dozens of meters high, and then smashed into the road. There must be a road that is -2 meters above sea level. Such a great hatred just rushed up, and as a result, such a great hatred flew out far away. And the cause of it all. Ivan slowly retracted his right foot. Turn around and walk towards Natasha Romanov. This place can't work, we have to change to a place that can accept lightning. My God, Tony couldn't help himself in shock from the perspective of the JARVIS broadcast. He first saw an afterimage flashing past, then returned to its original position, and then flew out in disgust. How fast does this have to be? Click. Tony opened his mouth wide in surprise and opened the armor mask, letting the rain fall into his mouth. Peter Parker, nearly paralyzed, came over. He saw Tony's expression. Ivan did it. Tony still nodded with his mouth open. It's like a dislocated jaw. But Peter Parker pretended to be calm and nodded, as if he understood. But inside, understand a hammer. That hatred is so great. So heavy. To be kicked so high. So far, he had also experienced the power of hatred. Anyway, it's the degree that he can't resist. And the weight of hate. Peter Parker himself is very clear. He was wrapping the cobweb around his hateful legs and pulling hard to get it. The power he felt very powerful before suddenly stopped. Then just slam the hatred. Peter Parker compares his feelings. Then divide the ratio in your mind. Finally put Ivan in for comparison. Result. Just can't see. The physical qualities of the hated are much higher than his own. Then Ivan's physical fitness is abhorrent. I don't know how many times. Is there any comparison? Ah, Peter Parker sighed. What's wrong? Tony recovered from the shock. I just suddenly felt that I wasn't that useful, Peter Parker said in disappointment. Then exercise. Tony came to Peter Parker and patted him on the shoulder. If I had your physical fitness, why would I study Mark's armor? Oh, is your armor called Mark? That's right, handsome. Cool. By the way, do we have to chat in the rain? Ah, it seems so, then let's hide. And the other side. After putting away the right leg that just used Arashi's feet. When Ivan returned to Natasha Romanov's side, he was slightly surprised to find out. Natasha Romanov is nearly 20 centimeters above the ground. And the electric charge on her body became more and more violent, as if she was venting the energy from her body. Ivan came close to her, and reached out to hug Natasha Romanov to heaven. Pop. As a result, he just reached out. A bolt of lightning struck Ivan's hand from Natasha Romanov's body. If it were ordinary people, this lightning bolt would be enough to kill them completely. But for Ivan it wasn't even a tickling. Ivan continues to reach forward until he wraps his arms around Natasha Romanov. Clap, clap, Pia. In this process, the electric charge on Natasha Romanov keeps triggering lightning strikes at all creatures that come close. It's just that these attacks are completely ignored by Ivan. He slammed Natasha Romanov into the lightning net with an overwhelming force. Feel the body being touched. Natasha Romanov just wanted to open his eyes a little while feeling the ability state. She was the first to smell a reassuringly familiar scent. After knowing it was Ivan, Natasha Romanov immediately relaxed his tense body and leaned against him. It's just that this charge doesn't seem to be very obedient. Even Natasha Romanov gave up resistance. But the charge is still like a stubborn child, and has been attacking Ivan with a crackle. Ivan shook his head helplessly. Use super flight. The figures of the two disappeared instantly. Then blinked and appeared directly above New York. Boom. The moment Natasha Romanov appeared in the sky. In an instant a huge amount of lightning strikes Natasha Romanov like a welcome. Ivan knew it was nature's gift to Natasha Romanov. So he didn't resist. Instead, he got hacked along with Natasha Romanov. Zzz. Terrifying voltages and charges circulated within Ivan and Natasha Romanov. Definitely, it doesn't matter much to Ivan's physical fitness. It's kind of funny though. Then Ivan flew a little further up. Wait until the two come to the position between the lightning cloud and the surface. Ivan let go of Natasha Romanov and flew to the other side to stand. Fortunately, Natasha Romanov can now float flight. Otherwise, why take this thunder? Boom. He had just dropped Natasha Romanov when Natasha Romanov was struck again by a huge amount of lightning. But still the same. Natasha Romanov was completely fine. As if the thunder had no power. But everyone knows that the power of this thunder has been enough for the entire New York to use electricity for a long time. My lord, Tony was shocked again when he saw the picture of the smart telescopic lens coming from the armor. Romanov agent, is this a rage? Peter Parker, who had strengthened his eyesight after the mutation, could barely see Natasha Romanoff, who was being struck by the thunder. Is this the female Thor? Everyone present was shocked to see all this. Boom, 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 lightning continued to strike Natasha Romanoff. And the frequency is very high, even getting faster and faster, reaching several times a second. The light from these lightning flashes illuminated New York at night. That is, tonight. At least hundreds of thousands of people were awakened by the thunder. But more than thunder and light. And the growing momentum of Natasha Romanoff. That's it. The dark clouded sky kept flashing lightning at Natasha Romanoff. I don't know how long it took. Until the winds start to ease. The torrential rain also began to shrink later. The dark clouds slowly began to dissipate. The frequency of lightning is also getting slower. See this, Ivan? No. It's probably over. Finally. The dark clouds gradually dissipated. The gust of wind also began to hide. The downpour also turned into a drizzle. There is also less and less lightning. Finally disappeared completely. All this natural wonder is finally over. Am I witnessing a future history? Tony looked at the sky and muttered. Hey, aren't you curious what the Romanov agent's ability is? Peter Parker sat beside him with his legs dangling with a curious expression on his face. Wind, torrential rain, lightning. Which would it be? Is there a possibility? Tony hesitated. What is possible? How can she do it all? What? On the other side of the sky. Natasha Romanoff, who had received the natural gift of ability, slowly opened her eyes. A flash of lightning burst out from her eyes in an instant. And when looking at Natasha Romanoff's eyes, she can clearly feel that her eyes are bright, emitting a light blue thunder light. Sizzle, sizzle. Natasha Romanoff raised his hand slowly. The power of thunder was slowly entwined in her hand. Lightning flashed around in her hands. And make a deterrent sound. It is estimated that no normal person wants to be hit by this lightning. Something will happen. Sudden. Natasha Romanoff seemed to remember, and looked around suddenly. She is looking for Ivan. After seeing Ivan, Natasha Romanoff habitually took a step forward in the air and wanted to walk over. The results are clearly visible. She stepped in the air and fell to Ivan's laughter. Ha 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 ha. Anyway, there is no one in the sky, and Ivan, who is not afraid of collapse, laughed out loud. Immediately after, but after 2 or 3 seconds, Natasha Romanoff clenched his silver teeth and glared. Ivan, who was laughing at himself, flew up slowly. This is clearly a sign of not being used to. Also normal. If a person suddenly can fly, then she will definitely not be able to adapt to the long journey. Natasha Romanoff flew slowly in front of Ivan. Just when Ivan thought Natasha Romanoff was going to stare at him or something, she stopped using flight's ability. He threw himself into Ivan's arms. Ivan definitely hugged her. Definitely, not proactive either. But she is all hanging on herself. What can she do if she doesn't report it? He was pinched around his waist by 2 round and slender legs. There are also 2 white jade-like lotus arms around his neck. But Natasha Romanoff wasn't fiddling with anything weird. Instead, he hugged Ivan silently, and spoke earnestly, sincerely behind Ivan's back. Thank you. Ivan responded, patting Natasha Romanoff on the shoulder. It's not easy either. In just one night, Natasha Romanoff initially took control of Stormgirl's ability after a struggle. As for why she is so fast, and faster than Ivan, that's because of the ability cap. What Ivan needed to control at the time was heat vision. And after the template is loaded, it is inherited in an optimal way. This is not as straightforward as the Natasha Romanoff ability, but the upper limit will be much higher. After a while, Natasha Romanoff got up and flew away from Ivan's embrace. She is not a little girl, not the kind of little girl who insists on sticking to a man's side all the time. Most men like women who know how distant and clingy they are. And Natasha Romanoff also has its own meaning of existence. She lowered her head, watching the city center, for fear of Ivan, had to stay in the destruction zone to deepen the hatred of destroying the city. There was a flash of war in her eyes. You can try to beat it alone. Ivan looked at the intellectual Natasha Romanov with satisfaction. This is the charm of mature women. Hear what Ivan has to say. Although Natasha Romanov felt a lot of pressure, the strength increase brought by ability made her eager to try. It's no big deal, Ivan said flatly. Its genes are collapsing, and its strength is weakening and declining all the time. It's a good time to master your ability. Natasha Romanov nodded. She knew Ivan was right. After a slow deep roar inhalation, Natasha Romanov turned around and looked at Ivan next to him and smiled suddenly. Ivan looked at her. Result: Natasha Romanov blows Ivan a kiss. Then he rushed down with the momentum of thunder. It's that kind of thing again. Ivan smiled helplessly. Have a little flair when you're doing business. When he did something crooked, he became serious again. To say that you don't like this kind of contrast is absolutely unconscionable. Ivan is normal, he just likes it. Definitely, like is like. It's impossible to be fascinated. Let's be honest. After having the ability of super brain, Ivan can even control how much and how little dopamine is produced in his brain. So in simple terms, he can even control whether he loves it or not. Like it or not, but he never controls that. Ivan slowly stretched out his hand and looked at the powerful ability in his body. I became strong enough to do whatever I wanted. I will train whoever I want. I like whoever I want. I can do whatever I want. The only thing that can bind me is my innate moral bottom line and my moods that can change at will. If something goes wrong in the middle, push to the table and start over. That is, power. And the other side, after discovering the figure of hatred. Natasha Romanov is like Thor awakening power of the thunder and lightning. The strong blue light of lightning flashed in the eyes, and at the same time, countless lightnings were wrapped around the body and flew towards the hatred. Boom! There was thunder in the sky after lightning and air crashed. Natasha Romanov's flight speed is very close to the speed of sound. Wait until Abomination hears the voice and turns back. Natasha Romanov had already punched Abomination in the head. Exclamation mark. Although the body of Abomination was not hammered away like Ivan's beating, its head also slid to one side like a tumbler. Exclamation mark. Exclamation mark. Hate suddenly roared in pain. After Natasha Romanov punched it hard, several arcs lingered and spread on its head. And there is an obvious fist mark on the position of the temple. This fist mark is not only punched out. There is also the power of thunder scorching on it. On the blackened fist print, the electric arc was obviously beating even more fiercely. My God, it's been how many times Tony has said that. He looked at the way he hated being beaten and couldn't help but shivered. Watching the battle, Tony explained to Peter Parker beside him. You know why the hatred didn't react. I know. Peter Parker felt inexplicable. Tony, he doesn't seem to know. Peter Parker's grades are top-notch. Tony, who failed to pretend, rubbed his nose in embarrassment, but said it anyway. The speed of sound is more than 300 meters per second, depending on the environment. And thunder is also sound, so the speed is the same. But the flight speed of that agent is close to the speed of sound and is in a subsonic state. Although there is a difference between the two, the distance is too short. So in the end, the fist and the thunder pretty much arrived together. That's why the ugly guy didn't react. Exclamation mark. After punching the hated head, Natasha Romanov floated in the air with thunder wrapped around him. Her eyes glowed with a strong blue light, and when she saw the powerful strength in her hand, she bent her fingers slightly and stretched out her hand toward the hatred. Zzzz. A powerful electric current burst out of Natasha Romanov's hands in an instant and hit the hated head. Ow! A roar of hatred and pain. Electric current seems to be more effective for its damage than physical damage. This seems to have had more serious consequences for its genetic breakdown. Natasha Romanov, see here. He stretched out his second hand and sent out the power of thunder to hit Abomination. Zzzz. A mighty electric current surrounds the Abomination. There was a burning smell in the air. At the moment New York is still dark. But the light of lightning lit up the whole street. I hated being struck by the lightning voltage and couldn't hold my head up. It propped its hands on the ground and pushed its feet hard to escape into the distance. Seeing this, Natasha Romanoff slapped her hands and added a full horsepower to Abomination's body. The abominable anti-electricity seems to have reached a ceiling. Even with Natasha Romanoff pressing it all out, Abomination also escaped her lightning suppression little by little. Ultimately, the Abomination was one step away from escaping Natasha Romanoff's lightning strike. But Natasha Romanoff's fighting level is not covered. Watching the Abomination flee from its lightning range, Natasha Romanoff stopped the lightning strike decisively. Then used flight ability to reach the head of Abomination in the blink of an eye. A strong thunder force wrapped around Natasha Romanoff's entire leg. Then she kicked Abomination hard. Boom! A series of lightning traces swept across the place where the foot had kicked. In the end, the kick slammed into the Temple of Hatred, and when the two were in contact, a shocking electric wave erupted at the place where they were hit. This time, Abomination was kicked over a somersault. It was kicked and rolled over. Sizzle. The place where the temple was hit is now not only a fist print, but also a footprint. The electric current kept beating on it. It shows that it has been hit hard here. Roar. Abomination fell to the ground with a weak roar. This kick really gave it a kick. Its head is dizzy now, and its consciousness is still a little confused when it lies on the ground. Natasha Romanoff, see here. Chang. She pulled the original 2 alloy daggers out of her thighs. The power of thunder began to exude from her hand, and it was still spreading to the dagger. The gleaming cold light and the jumping blue light were reflected in the hated eyeballs. Natasha Romanoff took a step toward the Abomination. Wait until you come to hate. Abomination suddenly reached out and waved hard at Natasha Romanoff. And Natasha Romanoff had been prevented. She jumped lightly, dodging directly from the big hand that Abomination waved over. And then fell from the sky on the back of Hatred. Then it's the same as last time. Push hard. Pissed. This time Natasha Romanoff inserted very hard. She didn't have that much power last time, so she only inserted the alloy dagger halfway through the acceleration of gravity. But this time is different. She just snapped in place. 2 alloy daggers shining with lightning pierced directly and deeply into the necks on both sides of the Hatred. No wonder he hated such a tragic roar. Because the pain now is not comparable to the last time. But is this the end? Where is this going? A little different from last time. This time, Natasha Romanoff did not choose a remote angle to insert the alloy dagger, but inserted it into the most muscles and nerves. And it didn't cut it directly. But next, Natasha Romanoff released his hands quickly. Exclamation mark. A strong lightning force appeared in her hand. Then she grabbed the dagger again, and threw all the power of thunder through the dagger into the body of Abomination. Zzz. Immediately, ferocious lightning flashed everywhere on Abomination. Abomination wants to yell, but only opened his mouth to shout. In the end it turned into a silent cry. Exclamation mark. Lightning continues. An unimaginable pressure of electric current wrecked everywhere in the Abomination. If the Abomination's appearance is strong, it must be the best choice to attack its internal organs and brain. And Natasha Romanoff is now. At the moment, not only was her body covered in lightning, but she was also struck by lightning and couldn't move. This is just magic damage. It also has a control effect. Tony took little Spider-Man and stared at the scene from a distance. After a while, Tony whispered, "Jarvis. Sir." After going back, add a lightning defense item to the armor research and development. 5. Okay, sir. And little Spider-Man held his arms in his arms and was a little stunned when he saw this picture. He raised his hand to look at his web shooters. What will happen to my cobweb and launcher with lightning? That must be a bad outcome. Tony glanced aside and knew about it. Your cobweb may be melted, but your transmitter is bound to burst from voltage overload. Peter Parker scratched his head. It seems that further research is needed in the future. Hear the research. Tony's eyes lit up, looking at little Spider-Man with a hood and asked. You should know my name, but I don't even know who you are, little Spider-Man. Hearing this sentence, Peter Parker hesitated. He looked around, and after making sure that no one was being monitored, he took off his hood. My name is Peter Parker. I study at Midtown Science High School, and I'm a classmate of Ivan's. When it comes to classmate Ivan, Peter Parker also raised his eyebrows proudly. Tony's eyes widened. You're still a high school student. Tony shook his head unacceptably. How old are you? Peter Parker answered definitely. My God. Tony pinched the bridge of his nose. I thought you were a guy in your 20s, but you're still a teenager. So what's the matter? Peter Parker replied indifferently. Ivan told me that a person with ability doesn't care about age, but how much ability he has. Etc., etc. Tony Stark suddenly reacted. He stared at Peter Parker and said word by word. Don't tell me, Superman, Ivan, like you, also 17 years old, the same age as you. Definitely not. That's good. Tony patted his chest and let out a breath. He's a few months older than me, and at 18 he can drink. Quote comma 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 exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark quote. Tony looked up at the sky, eyes blank, as if he had lost his soul. Superman is only 18. How old is he himself? As a result, Ivan 18 is so powerful. Luckily, he said he was a genius. Compared to Ivan, this is a fool. I will never call myself a genius again. Tony Stark thought to himself. What's wrong with you? Peter Parker looked at Tony inexplicably. It's okay, I want to be quiet. Who is quiet? Please don't ask. Quote. And at the battlefield of the moment. After putting all the lightning energy in the whole body in a rush. Natasha Romanov pulled out the alloy dagger and jumped back to the ground, also panting. No discharge from Natasha Romanov. Abomination finally loosened his muscles and slammed into the floor with a bang. A plume of black smoke came out of its nose. This is the proof that it has been electrofocal in the body. Not just these. Under the watchful eye of Natasha Romanov, the muscles of disgust begin to loosen. The originally tense muscles began to soften like ice cream with high temperature. Muscles go from soft to muddy. Then it turned from mud to something like muddy water. Looks extremely disgusting. Even Natasha Romanov is a little uncomfortable watching it. Sudden, a golden light fell from the sky. This light is different from before. The light in the past was about the thickness of a thumb, and the agglutination was terrifying. But now this light is very thick, dozens of times thicker. Huge amounts of light, oh no. It was huge amounts of golden beams of light falling from the sky. Then he shot a few back and forth on Abomination in an instant. After Natasha Romanov closed her eyes and opened them again. In less than a second. Just like that, the hatred that was disintegrating genetically disappeared. Disappeared completely. Even in this world, it can't find what it left behind, and it gasified directly. Tony Stark and Peter Parker came over after watching Ivan take the final touches. Take back the strengthening heat sight. Pat. Ivan slowly landed on the ground with his hands behind his back. He looked at everyone with satisfaction. You have performed very well, and you have successfully completed the task. Originally, according to Ivan's expectations, in the end, he still had to deal with the exposed hatred. But with Natasha Romanoff awakening ability, the combat power of the three of them just solved the hatred. If true, this is all over the target. After all, Natasha Romanoff's ability awakening is also one of her abilities, which she originally had, without the help of external forces. Great. Peter Parker jumped for joy. The two battles tonight really satisfied him. Little Spider-Man knows the intensity of the two battles. He participated in almost all the battles, and he never missed the battle in the end. Tony changed his style, shook his head modestly and said, I understand that I still have a lot of shortcomings, and there are still many places that need to be upgraded. Ivan gave him a slightly surprised look. Tony was able to admit his inadequacies on the spot where there were a few people. This is a rare thing. But this also means that Tony really officially faced his own shortcomings. Next is Natasha Romanoff. Does she need to say it? As the biggest output and biggest beneficiary of this battle. She smiled as Ivan blinked. I still have a lot of knowledge. In other words, teach me more. You are all good. Ivan smiled and looked at them. From the moment he raised Little Spider-Man, he said he wanted to be superhero in superhero's mind. And from now on, he was half done, and only the last half remained. Tighter, tighter, tighter. Woo, woo, woo. Drop, drop, drop. At this time, with the hatred disappears, the agents who were observing the battlefield and the police had already rushed over. Ambulances, Fire trucks, police cars, agent cars are all available. Subsequently, an agent car also found them. Gotcha. After opening the door, the Phil Coulson agent came down. He handed Ivan a piece of paper. Ivan took it and looked at it. Above is the farewell letter written by Banner. Bruce Banner. Ivan, I know it's rude for me to leave so suddenly, but I feel guilty for hating the destruction of the city, and I'm worried that I'll be as crazy as it someday. So I chose to leave directly. I plan to go to a remote and backward place to be a doctor and teacher, and I will come back when I can control Hulk proficiently. Definitely, if Ivan called me, I'd be right back. Finish. After reading Banner's handwritten letter, Ivan nodded and smashed his fist into powder. After looking at the police, nurses, doctors, firefighters, agents, etc. around Zhao Hao, Ivan got up to go back. There's no need to stay here forever. He still has 3 purple magic engines yet to start. Watching Ivan prepare to leave, Phil Coulson said quickly, Mr. Ivan, Director Nick Fury would like to meet you. Let him come over. Ivan didn't even look back, and was about to fly away. And many more, Natasha Romanoff said suddenly. She hurried to Ivan's side, whispered a word beside her ear, and went back. Ivan smiled, and the nod disappeared instantly. Looking at Ivan, who disappeared in the blink of an eye. Although Phil Coulson doesn't know what Natasha Romanoff said to Ivan, judging from Ivan's smile, he should be quite happy. But it's not up to him. Phil Coulson looked at Natasha Romanoff again and sighed inwardly. Director Nick Fury wants to meet you too. If it was before, he would directly say that the Fury plot wants to see you, but not now, times have changed. Inside S.H.I.E.L.D., including Director Nick Fury and Deputy Director Hill, looked at the situation through intermittently captured footage, cameras, and photos. Natasha Romanoff is already the most powerful S.H.I.E.L.D. So speak politely. Natasha Romanoff nodded. It just so happened that I wanted to talk to Director Nick Fury too. Phil Coulson asked the agent to drive the car over. Then let's go. After watching everyone leave, Tony and little Spider-Man also wanted to leave. But before leaving, Tony patted Peter Parker's shoulder earnestly and said, Come to me when you are free this week, and I will show you my Mark's Armor lab. Really? Peter Parker was suddenly surprised. To lie to you, I'm a big piece of shit. It's a word. It's a word. The S.H.I.E.L.D. building at the moment. A black car slowly passed the security check bridge and entered the exclusive island of S.H.I.E.L.D. At the moment, S.H.I.E.L.D. is also built on an island in a river. There is only one way to go in and out. Obviously at the moment is already late at night. But the whole building was still brightly lit and crowded with people. It must be because of the Iron Overlord incident and the hateful incident that made them work overtime like crazy. As the car slowly stopped in front of the building of S.H.I.E.L.D., Natasha Romanoff opened the door and walked straight in. The expressions of the surrounding agents changed when they saw Natasha Romanoff. Although they demonstrated well, the subtle differences were still visible to the careful Natasha Romanoff. She can already be sure. S.H.I.E.L.D. already knew about her ability. After entering the elevator's intelligence system began to ask. Level 9 Agent Natasha Romanoff, which floor are you going to? Office of the Director. Permissions passed, okay. Passed with permission from Natasha Romanoff. The elevator slowly moved up to Director Nick Fury's office. As soon as the elevator door opens, the office is located. Natasha Romanoff and Phil Coulson walked in. Nick Fury and Hill have been waiting here. Natasha Romanoff's expression did not change at all. Although she accepted Ivan's gift, she didn't do anything to be sorry to S.H.I.E.L.D. Even if it is done. With Natasha Romanoff's concentration, there is no panic. Heard Natasha Romanoff coming. Nick Fury stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows, turned around and said. At the moment, how should I call you? Roar. Natasha Romanoff agent, your code name needs to be changed to Thor. Natasha Romanoff smiled. It's as good as before. Hearing this sentence, Nick Fury nodded after the test. He turned to the desk. Reach out and swipe across the desk, as if pulling something to the front. Next moment, a lot of pictures are displayed on the screen. Tony Stark's Mark 1, Mark 2, Mark 3 and more. Peter Parker's Spider-Man battle suit, 8 spear weapons, web shooters, strength versus physicality, and more. Banner becomes Hulk's framed picture, as well as video, strength comparison, physique comparison and so on. Next is Natasha Romanoff. There are pictures, videos and PPT here. It's all sorted out by the entire S.H.I.E.L.D. agent. When it was Natasha Romanoff's turn, it became even more. Start with Iron Overlord. Natasha Romanoff's fast-moving skills video. Excellent bounce and agility video. Behind it is a video of the steel arm holding the Iron Overlord with both hands. At the same time, next to this picture, there is a power comparison chart about how much power is needed and what it looks like. Then the screen changes. Became what Natasha Romanoff started to evolve. This picture has become scarce. Because that place is the hardest hit area that hates destruction, few agents can touch it. So they got it. In the beginning, it was the scene where the hatred was flying, but there was no Ivan. Then Natasha Romanoff was carried to the sky by Ivan. So far, these have seemed fairly normal. But the next picture is very abnormal. Natasha Romanoff was carried into the air by Ivan, and was directly hit by a bolt of lightning. From a distance, the lightning was as thick as a bucket. But the two were unscathed, nothing happened. Except Ivan to let go, and that day floated in the air in amazement. If this is understandable, the next moment is even more shocking. Because the baptism of thunder began. The dazzling thunder began to slash at Natasha Romanoff. It's getting faster and faster, nearly flashing the camera equipment that filmed Natasha Romanoff to the point of being scrapped. But if you look at it with the naked eye, you will know. This is the thunder is too ferocious, even into a piece. That's it. Wait until Thunder's baptism is over. More outrageous to come. In Nick Fury, including the entire S.H.I.E.L.D. impression. Natasha Romanoff is very strong, but also within the range of normal people, because Natasha Romanoff has also undergone genetic strengthening. But what about next? Can fly at will, all over the body, lightning beats the huge hatred. Amazing strength, amazing speed. It can also unleash lightning strikes from a distance. Is this a normal person? Looking at himself like Valkyrie, Thor on the screen. Natasha Romanoff is still smiling. Having power is not a bad thing. Just like her now, she wants to stay in S.H.I.E.L.D. S.H.I.E.L.D. will respect her and respect her. If S.H.I.E.L.D. has a problem with her, then she also has the opportunity to fly away. Then, after reading Nada CEFH Shaw, Nick Fury ended up leaving the entire projected screen to Ivan. This time the content suddenly became short in essence. But in the end, they don't have much information. The general content projected on the screen is nothing more than Ivan's physical strength and strengthening ability. Nick Fury left the whole thing to Ivan. He just asked Natasha Romanoff. Romanov agent, no one in the entire S.H.I.E.L.D. knows Ivan better than you, do you want to add something? Replenish. Natasha Romanoff gave a small smile in her mind. I get it, it means complimenting him. It's not easy. Cough cough. Natasha Romanoff thought for a moment. His body is perfect, like a god in ancient prophecies, and he doesn't seem to have any weaknesses, his whole body is very hard, not to mention ability. Well, supplemented, but not fully supplemented. Said it, but didn't seem to say it. Nick Fury nodded slightly, sighing inwardly. I mean, what is the magnitude of his defense ability? Are there any comparisons and examples, which of our human weapons can hurt him, etc.? If this sentence is asked before Natasha Romanoff, Natasha Romanoff must have said what he had guessed. But now, I think, maybe only 2 hydrogen nuclear bombs can damage him, but at his flight speed. Natasha Romanoff said that there are no examples. But gave a look that understands. Who doesn't know that the 2 hydrogen nuclear bombs are the biggest weapons of destruction for mankind? Take this example. Dare S.H.I.E.L.D. Does the country dare to try? And Natasha Romanoff was right. At Superman's flight speed, hydrogen bombs and nuclear bombs can even damage Ivan. But it's impossible to get close to Ivan silently and blow up beside him. This is simply not realistic. That's it. Nick Fury, Hill, Phil Coulson and Natasha Romanoff discuss Ivan for half a day. The results were discussed late into the night. Natasha Romanoff also changed the way and boasted for a while. No idea. Natasha Romanoff thought to myself, I'm also realistic, right? That's what Ivan is like, I'm just telling the truth. Finally, they finally came to a conclusion. Ivan is strong, very strong. Cough cough cough. Just like Saitama, you know he's strong, but you don't know how strong he is. And haven't dared to try it yet. So to the end, This issue is considered to be in the past and cannot be discussed at all. There is no data to rely on, is it just relying on the brain to supplement? But no Ivan discussion. Director Nick Fury turned his attention to Natasha Romanoff again. According to Phil Coulson's agent report, Superman Ivan didn't want trouble and chose you to be the exclusive liaison. That's right, Natasha Romanoff confirmed. Director Nick Fury frowned. In fact, he really never doubted Natasha Romanoff. Being able to become a level 9 agent in S.H.I.E.L.D., there is no such thing as a traitor. Even if he didn't know that S.H.I.E.L.D. was already a Hydra person. But the high-level agent really hasn't been penetrated. So, now Natasha Romanoff is the #1 S.H.I.E.L.D. But he can't leave Ivan's side to perform tasks far away. A little uncomfortable, Nick Fury thought about the speculation reported by Phil Coulson. I'll confirm it again. Nick Fury asked tentatively, the ability you suddenly acquired is related to Ivan. This sentence made Natasha Romanoff's heart hesitation. But remember, Tony Stark, Bruce Banner, and Little Spider-Man have all been helped. Then, a careful investigation of this matter cannot be concealed. So Natasha Romanoff thought about it, then nodded to confirm. Seeing Natasha Romanoff nodding to confirm, Nick Fury nodded understandingly. That didn't say, then you stay in New York on missions near New York, and if there are missions out of the New York area, I'll tell Ivan. Nick Fury added a sentence after thinking about it. Also, S.H.I.E.L.D. is ready to help you push out to build an image. When Natasha Romanoff heard this, she was very smart and immediately thought why. One is to push himself to increase his fame, and then use himself to cement the connection between S.H.I.E.L.D. and Ivan. Is it the hatred that destroys so much in the city that someone needs to be as effective as the Captain America of World War II? 5. That's right, Nick Fury nodded. After these few battles, the public's mood about New York has been extremely bad. We need someone to become a rising star to restore the confidence of the citizens of the United States. So Mr. President has called me just now, and we have recommended you to be this rising star together. It just so happens that you'll spend most of your time in New York and you're perfectly suited for this task. Nick Fury finished speaking, quietly waiting for Natasha Romanoff's reaction. Hill also took out the tablet and called up the data graph to introduce. A few hours ago, a huge flow of people on the internet started from New York and spread to all parts of the country. The most talked about is Superman Ivan, the second is you. There are a lot of battlefield pictures and videos circulating on the internet. Among them, the video of Ivan holding you to accept thunder has reached 10 million views and millions of likes on YouTube in just a few hours. Everyone admires you and wants to see you. So you and Ivan have a lot of traffic on the web. But Ivan rarely shows up, and everyone's eyes are naturally on you, and when you're on a mission, S.H.I.E.L.D. will help you post some videos and photos. Once this plan is successful, it will be equivalent to controlling the fans' spiritual world and social speech, which is urgently needed. Hill said a whole lot of why. What to do. What do you get when you do it? For now, stepping on Ivan means the plan is almost certain to succeed. And S.H.I.E.L.D. also speculated, basically 89 close to 10. Natasha Romanoff was thinking, having an identity makes you appear more important. It is more important, and it will make one's own identity more noble. After being noble, it will make the experience of Ivan and himself feel fresh. In terms of conversion, if you really do, you have an advantage around Ivan. So Natasha Romanoff thought about it and nodded. So I'm going to be a star. It's more than that. Seeing Natasha Romanoff agree, 33 Hill laughed lightly. It's a superstar who surpasses the stars. Your appearance is a dimensional blow to celebrities, and no celebrity can compete with you for popularity. Everyone present agreed with this statement. Looks, Natasha Romanoff is top-notch. Temperament, also top-notch. Personality, maturity, charm, and coldness aren't enough. Strength, is the super ability enough? And it's not just an ordinary plan. If only S.H.I.E.L.D. came out with a normal person. Then she is not only difficult to get up. Even if you get up, it's easy to recruit assassination or something. But Natasha Romanoff is different. Who is coming? Afraid of seeking death. In this way, after continuing to discuss the plan for a while, everyone dispersed. At the moment it's too late. There is so much to do tomorrow. Iron Man and Abomination had a huge impact on New York. So big that S.H.I.E.L.D. collapsed quickly. The phones of the White House were also bombed. And Ivan in Angel's palace. He was resting on a recliner in the backyard drinking a drink. A breeze blows. The water in the pool sparkled. The scent of flowers wafted into Ivan's nostrils with the wind, then slipped away. Actually everything Natasha Romanov is in S.H.I.E.L.D. Ivan knew it all. But so in the matter, Ivan only cares about one thing. That's Natasha Romanov going to stardom. The goals of S.H.I.E.L.D. and the White House are actually more dazzling than Captain America did in World War II. Speaking of which, it's a bit like the superstar of the Walter Group in the Black Robe Picket. But it really made Ivan curious. After Natasha Romanov becomes a star, will it bring him the popularity of social beliefs that enhance ability? If you can, then Ivan is in favor. Who doesn't want to earn ability while lying down? But if not, something special when playing. This is, cough. Ivan took a sip and looked at the stars in the sky. Since his physique has become so strong, his sleep time has become less and more manageable. But if it was normal at this point, he would have gone to sleep. But sleep Natasha Romanov just told him to keep the door open. At this moment, Ivan's ears moved slightly. With his super hearing, he could already hear someone flying. No, it's already here. Hello, Natasha Romanov guest, welcome, my lord is in the backyard, you can go to him at any time. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.